Chapter 119. Bu Fong closed the doors of the store and returned to the kitchen. He originally wanted to practice his cooking, but he did not expect that Xiaoyu would actually give him such a difficult problem at the end. Bu Fong had only cooked the sage herb phoenix chicken soup before, but he was actually very clear about the principles behind it. It was mainly a test of one's familiarity with true energy cooking techniques. That was because one had to pay more attention to true energy control when cooking an elixir cuisine compared to ordinary cooking. System, can you explain the origin and effects of these two ingredients? Bu Fong did not hesitate and directly asked the system. For Bu Fong, the system was simply an encyclopedia. Basically, it had all the information about the ingredients. The system was silent for a moment before giving Bu Fong a reply. Amethyst heart orchid, a 6th grade spirit herb. A rare spirit herb that grows in the amethyst mine. It takes 100 years for it to mature, and only 3 amethyst heart orchids will grow in an amethyst mine. Each of them is purplish-red in color, and there are flame-like patterns on them. They are filled with dense spirit energy and amethyst fire energy. It is an extremely good spirit herb for treating mental injuries. The deep sea sky spirit abalone is a 5th grade sea spirit beast. It grows at the bottom of the deep sea all year round and is baptized by the spirit energy at the bottom of the sea. Its shell contains a natural spirit array, and when it is cooked, this spirit array can continuously provide water spirit energy. It has the effect of replenishing one's life force and alleviating mental injuries. The system seriously provided detailed information about the 2 ingredients to Bu Fong. After reading through it, Bu Fong took in a deep breath. From the introduction, it was not difficult to tell that these 2 ingredients were extremely rare. Their preciousness was at least a level higher than his own and the blood phoenix chicken. Bu Fong immediately felt a wave of pressure. That was because the more precious the ingredients were, the more difficult it was to cook the elixir cuisine. Furthermore, Bu Fong discovered that these 2 ingredients had a common characteristic. They both had the effect of treating mental injuries. Without a doubt, Xiaoyu was planning to use the elixir cuisine to treat a certain person who had suffered from mental injuries. Mental problems were not ordinary problems. Xiaoyu handed this elixir cuisine to Bu Fong to cook. On one hand, it was because Bu Fong was the only one in the imperial capital who could successfully cook a high-grade elixir cuisine. On the other hand, it showed Xiaoyu's trust in Bu Fong. Xiaoyu believed that Bu Fong was a principled person. This could be seen from the various rules in the store. Furthermore, Xiaoyu was very reassured about the store's safety. System, can you provide these 2 ingredients for me to practice? Bu Fong asked quietly. Yes, but if the host wants to use ingredients, he can purchase them from the system. The system earnestly said, Amethyst heart orchid, 1,000 crystals. Sky spirit abalone, 1,000 crystals. Bu Fong's face darkened. This was the first time he realized that the system was so evil. Could it be that in order to support his great cause of becoming the god of cooking who stood at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world, shouldn't these practice ingredients be provided for free? System, can it be a little cheaper? Bu Fong asked as he sucked in a breath of cold air. It can't. However, in order to increase the success rate of the elixir cuisine, the system suggests that the host can purchase other similar ingredients to substitute for practice. Substitute ingredients. 3rd grade spirit herb, fire spirit orchid, 50 crystals. 3rd grade sea spirit beast, black spirit abalone, 100 crystals. Bu Fong was stunned for a moment. He suddenly realized that the system's words made sense, and he was actually speechless. Then, give me 3 sets of substitute ingredients. In order to ensure the success rate of the elixir cuisine, Bu Fong chose to purchase 3 sets of substitute ingredients from the system in the end. The crystals used for the purchase were directly deducted from the sales. This caused Bu Fong's heart to ache even more. These were all cultivation. There were already 3 extra sets of ingredients in the cupboard. Bu Fong first took 1 set. Naturally, the black spirit abalone was not as good as the sky spirit abalone, and the spirit energy was also not as dense. However, it was still a substitute ingredient, so Bu Fong decided to make do with it. After cleaning the black spirit abalone, Bufong carefully observed the shell of the black spirit abalone. He discovered that there were faint, strange lines on the shell that formed a strange array. The array was slowly circulating and gathering dense spirit energy. Frankly speaking, the black spirit abalone was an abalone. It was not as big as the sky spirit abalone, but it was similar to some of the big abalones in Bufong's previous life. The best way to make elixir cuisine was to boil the abalone into a soup. The best medicinal cuisine was when the abalone was boiled into a soup. Especially with the addition of spirit herbs, the value of the soup would be even higher. It could be said that the essence of a bowl of elixir cuisine lay in it. Taking out a clay pot, Bufong placed the cleaned black spirit abalone into the clay pot. Then, he poured in the spirit spring water provided by the system. The spring water was clear, sweet, and contained spirit energy. After exchanging for some other spirit herbs from the system, Bufong carefully placed them into the clay pot after cutting and processing them. The placement of these spirit herbs was also very particular. Once the placement was different, the flow of spirit energy would be different, which would affect the taste and medicinal efficacy of the elixir cuisine. After adjusting the placement of the spirit herbs, Bufong covered the clay pot and began to slowly boil it. This was a step that could not be rushed. When hot steam rose from the clay pot, Bufong opened the lid and released the first round of steam. Then, he used the dragon bone kitchen knife to cut the fire spirit orchid and dripped a few drops of the rich spirit juice into the clay pot. The clay pot emitted a rich fragrance. This time, Bufong needed to pour in his true energy and control the spirit juice to continuously seep into the black spirit abalone. After removing the lid for the third time, he placed the fire spirit orchid into the clay pot, covered it, and began a boil. In about an hour, the elixir cuisine was completed. Inside a luxurious inn in the imperial city, on the spacious bed, an enchanting and fiery figure was sitting cross-legged. Yan's jet-black hair spread out like a waterfall. On her beautiful face, her eyes were tightly shut. Her hands were forming seals as true energy continuously floated up and down outside her body. After eating so many delicacies in Bufong's store, the true energy within her body was immediately filled, and she began to break through to a new realm. Even though Yan's true energy cultivation level was already at the early stage of 7th grade Battle Saint, this breakthrough would allow her to directly reach the late stage. Even though she did not reach 8th grade, it was already quite good. After all, once one reached the level of Battle Saint, every improvement was a transformation of one's strength. Buzz. It was as if an invisible sound wave was spreading out. Mysterious runes were circulating in Yan's eyes. Her sparkling and translucent skin was overflowing with light. At this moment, she was so beautiful that it was suffocating. She was like an otherworldly fairy, beautiful beyond compare. Suddenly, with a long howl, Yan felt as if she forcefully pushed open a tightly shut door. Even though it was only a crack, the surging true energy instantly flowed through her body, causing her to involuntarily scream out loud. Under the quiet and bustling appearance of the imperial city, a storm was raging. With a long howl, a pillar of true energy shot up into the sky. It was extremely eye-catching in the dark night. In a Shao manner, Xiao Meng suddenly opened his eyes and gazed at the pillar of true energy that shot up into the sky. His face turned cold and his figure moved, leaving the room. Stepping on the air, he sped toward the location of the pillar of light. A 7th grade Battle Saint appeared in the imperial city at this time. I wonder if he's a friend or foe. Left Minister's residence. Zhao Musheng, who was draped in a crane cloak, calmly looked at the pillar of true energy. He narrowed his eyes, and there seemed to be a faint golden light swirling in the depths of his eyes. This is the aura of the Celestial Arcanum sect. Could it be that even the Celestial Arcanum sect wants to get involved this time? He muttered to himself. Then, he smiled and slowly took a step forward. His entire body gracefully floated into the air and unhurriedly sped toward the location of the Pillar of Light. At this moment, not only the left minister and Xiaoming, all of the forces within the imperial city were in an uproar. True energy shooting up into the sky. That was a realm that only a 7th grade battle saint could reach. For a battle saint to appear in the imperial city at such a sensitive time, no matter who it was, there would be chaos. If either the crown prince or king, you could obtain the support of this battle saint. Their advantage would be enough to crush their opponent. Chapter 120. At the entrance of a luxurious inn within the imperial city, Tang Yin was solemnly standing at the entrance with a long sword in his arms. His entire being was extremely grim as he stared into the distance. The surging true energy circulating around his body appeared to be overflowing with colors in the dark night. Behind him, a pillar of true energy soared into the sky and emitted a surging aura. He knew that his gluttonous master had made a breakthrough. However, he was also having a headache. Tang Yin was well aware of the current situation within the imperial city. Only his master would make such a high-profile breakthrough at a time like this. Wasn't this clearly telling others that he was going to cause trouble? What did it mean for a 7th grade battle saint to appear within the imperial city? The crown prince and king, you would be completely envious. Experts were equivalent to resources and were the guarantee for their ascension to the throne. As expected, Tang Yin focused his attention and lightly exhaled as he gazed at the tall and sturdy figure walking through the air. The guardian of the Light Wind Empire, 7th grade battle saint, Xiaomeng. Tang Yin stared at Xiaomeng. This was his first time seeing this legendary figure. Beside Tang Yin, his junior sister Lu Xiaoxiao actually stood up as well. She was somewhat timidly standing behind him, which made him feel rather warm inside. May I know who you are, and why have you come to my imperial city? Before he even arrived, Xiaomeng's dignified voice had already descended. It was as if an invisible pressure had landed on Tang Yin's body, causing his body to slightly tremble. I am a disciple of the Celestial Arcanum sect. The three of us have no ill intentions in coming to the imperial city. Please rest assured, General. Tang Yin was neither servile nor overbearing as he clenched his fist and said to Xiaomeng, who was walking through the air. Xiaomeng stood with his hands behind his back as he slowly walked forward step by step. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and soon he landed in front of Tang Yin with a solemn expression. Celestial Arcanum sect? The Celestial Arcanum sect actually dispatched a 7th grade battle saint to my Light Wind Empire on the eve of His Majesty's passing. You're telling me you have no ill intentions? Do you think I'll believe you? Xiaomeng lightly said with the corners of his mouth curled up as if he was sneering. Tang Yin was truly suffering in silence. They really did not have any ill intentions and only came to the imperial city for the Phoenix Blood Herb in Senior Bufong's possession. Tang Yin was also helpless since the situation had developed to this point. It was all because of his gluttony. Tang Yin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If his gluttonous master hadn't eaten all the dishes in the store, wouldn't everything have been fine? Under the pressure that Xiaomeng deliberately released, Tang Yin could only emphasize that they had no ill intentions. The pillar of true qi within the inn was rapidly shrinking. Evidently, the person inside had completed his breakthrough and was beginning to withdraw his aura. Very quickly, the pillar of light completely disappeared. Da-da-da. The crisp sound of footsteps could be heard as Zhao Musheng, draped in a crane cloak, slowly approached. His eyes were squinted and a smile appeared on his face. General Xiao, don't scare them. After all, they're guests from afar. It wasn't easy for the Tianji sect's experts to appear in our imperial capital. As the host, we have to show them enough respect. Zhao Mushing's voice was very gentle, with a kind of tactful way of handling matters. He was all smiles, making it hard for people to get angry. However, Xiaomeng became angry when he saw Zhao Mushing's face. This old fox was actually a 7th grade battle saint. Everyone had been deceived by him for so long. No wonder the emperor was so wary of Zhao Mushing when he was still alive. It turned out that he already knew this old fox was not simple. For a 7th grade battle saint to hide his cultivation level for so many years What was his true identity? What was his goal? Xiao Meng was clueless. Therefore, Xiao Meng did not have the slightest bit of goodwill toward Zhao Mushing. The pressure on Tang Yin's body increased. An empire general and the empire's minister of the left were both people of noble status. The invisible pressure emitted by them made him tremble uncontrollably. Just as Tang Yin was feeling the immense pressure, the door behind him suddenly opened. A gust of true energy that was like a cool breeze brushed past, dispersing the pressure on Tang Yin's body like melting snow. A figure wrapped in a large robe walked out from within. "Master!" Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao hurriedly shouted. Xiao Meng and Zhao Mushing also looked over and saw a woman wearing a veil. Zhao Mushing's pupils constricted. He immediately recognized the identity of this woman and was slightly surprised. The Celestial Arcanum Sect's third elder. This was an extremely noble status. What exactly was her purpose in coming to the imperial city? Xiao Meng narrowed his eyes as he looked at this woman. The surging waves of true energy had yet to dissipate, but it made him feel a trace of danger. This woman was not simple. Zhao Mushing, long time no see. The uncle from back then has already grown into the grandpa of today, and Ai Yin said with a faint smile. Zhao Mushing withdrew his gaze. The corners of his mouth curled up as he sighed. The little girl from back then has also become a person of noble status. The Celestial Arcanum Sect is indeed not simple. "What business do you have in my imperial city?" Xiao Meng asked with a frown. The other party seemed to be very familiar with Zhao Mushing. Could it be that Zhao Mushing was also a member of the Celestial Arcanum Sect? And Ai Yan's devastatingly beautiful eyes turned and landed on Xiao Meng. The smile on her face also disappeared. Then she raised her finger, pointed at Zhao Mushing, and said to Xiao Meng, "Whatever he is doing in the imperial city, we are here to do." Uff. When Zhao Mushing heard this, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Even after so many years, this girl was still as fond of stirring up trouble as before. Her words directly dragged him down with her. Below, Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao were dumbstruck. What was their master saying? Wasn't their purpose in coming to the imperial city purely for the phoenix blood herb? When did they have another purpose? Don't spout nonsense. This old man has been in the imperial city all these years, and all the way to the position of minister of the left was to serve the empire. Don't slander me. Zhao Mushing chuckled and waved his hand, indicating that his purpose in coming to the imperial city was very simple. Xiao Meng chuckled. Who would believe Zhao Mushing's nonsense? What? Old man Zhao, you think I'm wrong? Then why don't we have a fight, and whoever wins will be right. How about it? And Ai Yin cheerfully said as she looked at Zhao Mushing with her large eyes. The corners of Zhao Mushing's mouth twitched as he shook his head. He turned around and left, not wanting to stay for too long. My old bones can't take any more torment. Xiao Meng gave an Ai Yin a profound glance. And Ai Yin was naturally not afraid. Even though Xiao Meng was the guardian of the Light Wind Empire, she was not afraid at all. After all, an Ai Yin, who had just made a breakthrough, was still very confident. Xiao Meng left and did not bother an Ai Yin for too long. After Xiao Meng left, a domineering aura gradually appeared in an Ai Yin's large eyes. She swept her gaze across the surroundings, and then her melodious female voice resounded through the surroundings of the inn. All the cats and dogs in the surroundings scram. Don't bother me. I don't want to see anyone. The faces of King Yu and the Crown Prince, who were rushing over, immediately darkened. This female battle saint seemed to have a rather violent temper. Bufang, who had just climbed onto his bed and was about to sleep, was suddenly awakened by the reverberating voice. He rubbed his eyes in confusion. Why did this voice sound so familiar? However, after giving it some thought, he could not figure out what it was. Hence, Bufang continued to sleep. He was exhausted from cooking an elixir cuisine. The first elixir cuisine was a failure without any suspense. It was not because the cooked elixir was inedible, but because it was different from what Bufang expected. He did not fully utilize the medicinal effects of the elixir cuisine and also made some mistakes when channeling true energy into it. There is only one set of ingredients provided by Xiao Yu, so no mistakes could be made. Therefore, Bufang had to sum up today's mistakes and strive for success the next day. At daybreak the next day, the imperial city began its busy day. Within the imperial palace, many eunuchs and palace maids were busily making arrangements in the majestic main hall. In 2 days, it would be the day of the emperor's funeral. There were some things that needed to be prepared, and the atmosphere was somewhat solemn. Outside the gate of heavenly mystery, Ji Qingxue, who was wearing a plain robe, was slowly walking toward the main hall with a complicated expression in his eyes. Chapter 121. White snow fluttered down from the heavens, as light as goose feathers, sprinkling all over the ground, covering the golden bricks and jade tiles of the imperial palace with a layer of silver, causing the majestic main hall to emit an eerie coldness. Ji Qingxue was wearing a plain robe, and his hair was tied up with a thin string. He did not bring many accessories as he slowly walked toward the main hall. The snow on the road to the main hall had already been swept away by the eunuchs. The road was flat and led straight to the main hall. However, the further Ji Qingxue walked, the more stifled he felt. After crossing the gate of heavenly mystery, the main hall was right in front of him. He stepped onto the stone steps and stood at the entrance of the main hall. The surrounding eunuchs and palace maids hurriedly bowed to him. Ji Qingxue gently nodded his head, indicating for them to continue. He himself, with his hands behind his back, stepped into the main hall. This was the place where his father, the emperor, often stayed when he was alive. Today, in the main hall, the vigorous and high-spirited figure of the past had already disappeared, leaving behind only a cold wind that seemed to be sighing helplessly and unwillingly. A figure slowly walked out from the inner part of the main hall. Lian Fu's body seemed to be a little tired. The circles under his eyes were faintly dark, and his head of hair had turned white, making him look ever so glaring. Eunuch Lian. Ji Qingxue did not dare to underestimate this chief eunuch. After all, the other party was a 7th-grade battle saint and a trusted aide of his father. Third Prince, why have you come to the main hall? Lian Fu's shrill voice contained a hint of exhaustion. He lightly flicked his horsetail whisk and asked Ji Qingxue with a face that had yet to fade away. Lian Fu and the emperor had a good relationship and seemed to have been together since childhood. Now that Emperor Changfeng had passed away due to his injuries, no one was more saddened than Lian Fu. Eunuch Lian, I wish to see my father. Ji Qingxue took a deep breath, bowed to Lian Fu, and said. Lian Fu weakly pinched his thumb and middle finger, glanced at Ji Qingxue, and directly refused. No, His Majesty has ordered that I cannot meet anyone until the time of the funeral. Can a son even see his father one last time? Ji Qingxue asked with a frown. Third Prince, please return. You should know that I cannot go against His Majesty's decree, even if His Majesty has passed away. When Ji Qingxue saw how resolute Lian Fu was, he sighed in his heart. Without further ado, he turned around and left the hall. Lian Fu looked at Ji Qingxue's disappearing figure with a deep gaze. Bang! Bang! Loud knocks rose on the door and interrupted Bufang, who was practicing his Big Dipper carving technique. He turned his head around expressionlessly and cast a glance at the door, which was trembling because of the knocks. Who would keep banging on the door so early in the morning? Bufang washed his fair and slender palms. After wiping off the water stains on his hands, he walked to the door and opened it. What came into view was a face covered by a veil. On the face, there was a pair of eyes that could topple nations and cities. They were filled with excitement. Owner Bu has finally opened the door. Quick, let me in. Yin said impatiently. However, Bufang did not move. He blocked the door and looked at her expressionlessly. It's not business hours yet. What are you doing here so early? Yin was startled. She immediately raised her hand and held the ingredients in her hand in front of Bufang and said, After eating Owner Bu's dishes yesterday, my heart was itching and I felt that I benefited a lot from it. Therefore, I wanted to give it a try and show it to Owner Bu. and Ai Yin was very confident in her own culinary skills. In the Celestial Arcanum sect, everyone was conquered by the deliciousness of her dishes. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. This woman must be crazy. She ran over early in the morning and said that she wanted to cook a delicacy. Did she want to borrow his kitchen? I don't want to see it. I won't lend out my kitchen either, Bu Fong said calmly. And Ai Yin immediately choked. She didn't want to borrow the kitchen. How was she going to cook without a kitchen? When she saw that Bu Fong was about to close the door again, and Ai Yin immediately became anxious. True energy gushed out from her body and held onto the door to prevent Bu Fong from closing it. Wait a minute, and Ai Yin shouted. Are you trying to cause trouble? Bu Fong said indifferently as he felt the true energy surging out from Ai Yin's body. Then, a red light bloomed beside him, and Xiao Bai's chubby figure appeared. Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others, Xiao Bai said mechanically as his eyes flickered. Sai, you are so insensitive. I sincerely wanted to cook a dish for you to taste, but you actually want to chase me away. How can you be so heartless to a beauty? And Ai Yin's big eyes were watery, and she looked like she was about to cry. And Ai Yin actually felt a terrifying threat from Xiao Bai's body. As expected of the guy who was able to take away the phoenix blood herb. Tell me your purpose. Don't beat around the bush, Bu Fong said as he frowned and glanced at Ai Yin. When he said this, the tears in Ai Yin's eyes instantly disappeared, and she returned to her otherworldly appearance. I want to learn the technique you use to prevent the spirit energy from leaking out of the spirit beast meat, Ai Yin directly said. Bu Fong calmly stared at Ai Yin, and Ai Yin also stared back, unwilling to be outdone. Their gazes collided in the air, without holding anything back. Bang! All right, Bu Fong admitted defeat in the end. This woman's gaze was too sharp, so Bu Fong chose to close the door. I won't teach you. After closing the door, Bu Fong's indifferent voice drifted out and reached the stunned Ai Yin's ears, causing her to freeze in place. After a while, Bu Fong finally finished practicing his dishes and opened the door with the freshly cooked sweet and sour ribs in his hands. At the door, Ai Yin was wrapped in a robe and squatting there. When she saw Bu Fong, she immediately stood up excitedly. Bu Fong felt a headache coming on. Why was this woman still here? Blackie, it's time to eat. Ignoring the woman, Bu Fong softly said. He placed the sweet and sour ribs in front of Blackie and stroked the latter's soft and warm fur. Then, Bu Fong turned around and returned to the store. Business hours officially began. Smelly boss, I'm back. The sound of footsteps came from the alleyway. Ouyang Xiaoyi's voice approached from afar and quickly resounded in Bu Fong's ears. Bu Fong had just served the dish to Fatty Jean when he raised his head in astonishment and saw Ouyang Xiaoyi, whom he had not seen for a few days, bouncing into the store. Looking at this girl's cheerful appearance, it was as if she had just been released, even though Ouyang Xiaoyi had indeed just been released. Who are you? The moment Ouyang Xiaoyi entered the store, she saw a woman wearing a veil and a loose robe following behind the smelly boss. She immediately widened her eyes and asked in puzzlement. The smelly boss found a new waitress so quickly? He's already tired of the old so quickly? Who are you, little girl? And Ai Yin glanced at Ouyang Xiaoyi and snorted before continuing to follow behind Bu Fong. When Bu Fong walked into the kitchen, she wanted to follow him. However, she was coldly and mercilessly blocked by Xiao Bai. If it wasn't for the fact that Ai Yin felt pressure by this metal lump, she would have torn it apart with a slap. Ouyang Xiaoyi pouted. Her heart ached so much that she could not breathe. The smelly boss, who was always tired of the old and liked the new, actually found a new waitress. She immediately felt as if she had been abandoned by the entire world. Xiaoyi, serve the dishes. Just when Ouyang Xiaoyi's eyes were filled with tears, like a flood that was about to burst a dam, Bu Fong's indifferent voice came from the kitchen. Ouyang Xiaoyi was startled. She sniffled, and her expression instantly brightened up. She eagerly ran toward the window. Ha! The smelly boss did not change the waitress. After handing over the dish to the joyful girl who did not know what was going on, Bu Fong turned his gaze toward Ai Yin and said with a frown, Aren't you annoyed by following me around? If you teach me the technique to control the spirit beast meets spirit energy, I won't pester you. And Yin snorted. She was somewhat unreasonable. Then cook a dish that you think you're the most proud of. If I'm satisfied, I will teach you. Otherwise, don't pester me. Bufong paused for a moment before seriously saying. Chapter 122. Bufong's words caused Yan's eyes to immediately light up. Her eyes almost curved into crescent moons as she excitedly said, "You said it yourself. Lend me the kitchen first." Without a doubt, the matter of lending the kitchen was once again mercilessly rejected by Bufong. Go to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's kitchen. My kitchen is not for outsiders to use, Bufong said. Even he was impressed by his own resourcefulness. Yin suspiciously glanced at Bufong, snorted and left. Since Bufong refused to lend her the kitchen, she had no choice but to go to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's kitchen. This was the only way. As for whether the Immortal Phoenix restaurant would lend it to her or not, was it up to them? Watching Yan's departing figure, Bufong finally heaved a sigh of relief. This woman had been following him around like a bum for the entire morning and had already seriously affected his business. The alleyway was still snowing heavily and the cold wind was whistling. However, the interior of the store was exceptionally warm and comfortable. Ji Qingxue, who was wearing a white velvet robe, exhaled a breath of cold air as he walked out of the alleyway. He could not help but feel a little happy when he stepped into the store. "Owner Bu, let me see what new dishes have been released recently." Ji Qingxue took off his thick and heavy velvet coat and greeted Bufong. Then, he turned his gaze toward the menu behind him. During the days he was away from the sect, many new dishes had probably been released. "Owner Bu, give me a serving of red braised meat and a jar of ice-hard jade urn wine." "Oh, Xiaoyi girl, long time no see. I feel like you've grown taller and become even more beautiful," Ji Qingxue said with a smile as he rubbed Ouyang Xiaoyi's head. Bufong nodded. As he walked toward the kitchen, he lightly said, "Wait a moment." Ji Qingxue sniffed the fragrance of the dishes floating in the store, and a smile appeared on his face. Only in the store was he most relaxed. Here, he did not need to think about anything and did not even need to worry about his safety. He was somewhat infatuated with the atmosphere of the store. Just as Ji Qingxue was waiting for Bufong to cook the red braised meat, a burst of coquettish laughter came from the alleyway. The laughter was filled with charm, and the crisp sound of bells clinking against each other could be heard. "Sister, do you think this is a store?" "It's now rumored to be a black-hearted store in the Imperial City," a female voice asked in a lazy and doubtful tone. "Opened in this corner. According to that old fellow Hun Qinyun's description, this should be the place. Let's go, sisters. We want to see just what kind of miraculous place this little restaurant that even old fellow Hun Qinyun suffered a loss has." Then, a burst of giggling female voices rang out. Accompanied by the jingling of bells, several enchanting and charming figures stepped into the store. When Wei Xiangxi stepped into the warm and cozy store, her phoenix eyes slightly twitched. Outside was a world of ice and snow, but inside the store, it was warm and blooming with flowers. She thought, he really has some tricks up his sleeve. Furthermore, the aroma of the dishes wafting in the air caused Wei Xiangxi to be intoxicated. It was truly fragrant. "Xiaoyi, serve the dishes." After Bufong finished cooking the red braised meat, he placed it by the window and called out to Xiaoyi. Xiaoyi eagerly ran over, picked up the red braised meat, and walked toward Ji Qingxue. Bufong walked out of the kitchen with a jar of ice-hard jade, urn wine in his hand, and placed it in front of Ji Qingxue. "Please enjoy your meal," Bufong said. After he finished speaking, his gaze landed on the three figures that had just stepped into the store. These were three women dressed in extremely revealing clothes. It had to be said that they were extremely good-looking and seductive, vividly displaying the charm of a woman. "Oh, this owner is actually a handsome young man. Come here quickly, this elder sister wants to order." Wei Xiangxi's gaze landed on Bufong's body, and she immediately covered her mouth and chuckled. Ji Qingxue sneered and shook his head. He focused his attention on the red braised meat. If these women from the Joyous Union sect were here to eat, then it would be fine. However, if they were here to cause trouble, then that would be fun. Looking at the overflowing fragrance of the rosy red braised meat, Ji Qingxue couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He picked up his chopsticks and quickly picked up a piece of meat and put it into his mouth. The fragrance of the meat was like a bomb exploding in his mouth. It instantly covered his taste buds and caused him to be completely intoxicated. What do you want to eat? Order it yourself. Look at the menu behind you. Bufang expressionlessly said as he glanced at the three women dressed in revealing clothes. After he finished speaking, he walked toward the kitchen. Wei Xiangxi didn't expect Bufang to actually ignore her. This made her a little angry. This elder sister is so beautiful. Why don't you take a few more glances? Ding ring ring. A crisp sound of a bell rang out. Then, Wei Xiangxi's figure appeared beside Bufang. Her slender and fair sleeves rested on Bufang's shoulder. Her red lips opened seductively as she softly said, "Don't go. Accompany this elder sister and recommend some delicious food to this elder sister." Ouyang Xiaoyi only felt a wave of fragrance drifting past her. She widened her eyes and stared at that woman as if her entire body was about to stick to the smelly boss. How could there be such a shameless woman in this world? Ouyang Xiaoyi was furious. Was she trying to seduce the smelly boss? Bufang furrowed his brows and glanced at that woman. His expression was cold as usual as he expressionlessly said, "Take your hand away and stay away from me. The smell on your body is too pungent." "Oh, little brother, are you embarrassed?" Wei Xiangxi was startled for a moment. Then, she chuckled and extended her fair and slender fingers toward Bufang's chin. Slap! Bufang expressionlessly raised his hand and directly slapped Wei Xiangxi's palm away. Wei Xiangxi was startled for a moment. Then, the expression on her face gradually turned cold as true energy surged from her body. "You're really not giving this elder sister any face." Wei Xiangxi sneered. Ever since she entered the imperial city, she had always heard that the black-hearted store's owner was incomparably arrogant. Not only were his dishes expensive, but his temper was also quite bad. Now that she had seen him in person, he truly lived up to his reputation. "Are you planning to cause trouble in the store?" Bufang glanced at her and puzzledly asked. Even now, there were still people who would foolishly come to his store to cause trouble. These three women were either big-breasted and brainless, or they were foreigners. He picked up a piece of red braised meat with his chopsticks and placed it in his mouth. Then, he drank a mouthful of ice-hard jade urn wine, feeling extremely satisfied. While he was at it, he could also watch owner Bu being teased. His days could not get any better, and his mood was extremely relaxed. Ouyang Xiaoyi angrily glared at Wei Xiangxi. This shameless woman. Seeing that the woman did not answer him, Bufang could not be bothered with her and continued walking toward the kitchen. However, just as he took a step forward, Wei Xiangxi, who had returned to her senses, once again approached him. Buzz! With a flash of red light, Xiaobai appeared in front of Wei Xiangxi. Its mechanical eyes slightly turned as it stared at Wei Xiangxi and mechanically said, "Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others." "Io, you little rascal, you actually want to strip this elder sister's clothes. You're really annoying. However, this elder sister likes little brothers like you." The corners of Wei Xiangxi's mouth twitched and her eyes turned cold. True energy wrapped around her body as she grabbed at Bufang. Bang! However, in the next moment, a muffled sound rang out. Wei Xiangxi let out a shriek and staggered a few steps back. She looked at Xiaobai, who had sent her flying with a single hit, in astonishment. "This puppet is a little interesting. Could this be the trump card of your store, that Hun Qin mentioned? Sisters, let's go together and dismantle this lump. We'll bring it back for Hun Qinyan to take a look and also give His Highness a greeting gift," Wei Xiangxi said with a light smile as she swung her veil. Since they were cooperating with King Yu, they had to give King Yu a greeting gift. At the very least, they had to make King Yu pay attention to their joyous union sect. The way to make King Yu pay attention to them was to let him know of their strength. Hun Qianyun was currently highly regarded by King Yu. However, as long as they could get rid of this store that had once caused Hun Qianyun to suffer a setback, Wouldn't that mean that they were more powerful than Han Xianyan? Chapter 123. Since they were going to cooperate, they naturally had to display their strength in order to gain King Yu's favor. There were not many places in the imperial city where they could display their strength. However, they had coincidentally heard some rumors about this black-hearted store. Since Han Xianyan had also suffered a setback at this store, this was simply the best place to display their strength. That was why Wei Xiangxi came with her 2 Battle King subordinates. In Wei Xiangxi's opinion, Han Xianyan looked like he was about to die. The reason he suffered a setback at this black-hearted store was probably because he was not strong enough. However, just because Han Xianyan could not, it did not mean that the 3 of them could not, especially when they found out that the owner of this store was a man. In their opinion, there was no man that they could not handle. The Joyous Union sect was one of the 10 major sects and was a demonic sect. Most of its members were female, and they practiced cultivation techniques that harvested yang to nourish yin in order to increase their cultivation level. It could be considered as an evil sect. However, the Joyous Union sect was, after all, a sect with a strong background. They had a lot of resources and countless tricks up their sleeves. Wei Xiangxi and the other 2 stood together and formed a formation. True energy immediately burst forth from their bodies, and a pink mist spread out from their bodies. This pink mist seemed to carry a strange fragrance. This fragrance would cause anyone who smelled it to enter a dazed state. Bufang only smelled a little of it, and his eyebrows immediately knitted together. A hint of coldness flashed across his eyes. Having this kind of smell mixed into a store that was filled with the fragrance of dishes was like having rat droppings mixed into a pot of soup. It was disgusting. Xiao Bai, throw them out, Bufang coldly said, finally getting a little impatient. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered. After receiving Bufang's order, he immediately disappeared on the spot with a swoosh. Do you really think a piece of metal can deal with us 3 sisters? Do you feel the blood and energy in your body boiling right now? Do you feel extremely uncomfortable? Wei Xiangxi charmingly said with a smile. She could not sense any true energy from Xiao Bai's body, so there was probably nothing special about this piece of metal. Therefore, she completely disregarded Xiao Bai. However, the next moment, Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes enlarged in her eyes and appeared directly in front of her. Wei Xiangxi was taken aback. Very quickly, she discovered that her entire body had been lifted into the air. Rip! In the instant that she soared into the air, Wei Xiangxi felt a terrifying force acting on her body, causing her pink veil to be torn to shreds, leaving behind only a pink undergarment and a pair of underwear to cover her private parts. Bang! When Xiao Bai waved his arm, the formation formed by the 3 sisters was blown away by the strong wind. Wei Xiangxi and the other 2 were directly thrown out of the store by Xiao Bai, almost naked. The sound of 3 heavy objects falling into the snow rang out, and it was slightly muffled. Thereafter, a piercing shriek rang out from the snowy ground. Wei Xiangxi drilled out from the snowy ground. She was only wearing a doo-doo and underpants. The doo-doo was slightly protruding, revealing her slender and fair legs. Her voluptuous figure was undoubtedly revealed. Wei Xiangxi took out a thin veil from her storage space and draped it over her shoulders. Her pretty face became extremely cold. She, Wei Xiangxi, had never suffered such a great loss before. She was actually stripped naked and thrown out of the store. It was simply too shameful. Wei Xiangxi stamped her fair and translucent feet on the ground. Accompanied by a surge of dense true energy, the surrounding snowflakes were all blown away. Wei Xiangxi's long hair fluttered in the wind as she suddenly charged toward the store. Xiao Bai stood at the entrance of the store. When he saw Wei Xiangxi charging toward him, his mechanical eyes slightly flickered. Then he raised his fist and punched out. Bang! Wei Xiangxi's entire body was sent flying. She fiercely crashed into the wall of the alleyway and sank deep into it. Those who cause trouble again will be obliterated, Xiao Bai said mechanically. As his mechanical eyes flickered, there seemed to be a flash of purple light. It caused Wei Xiangxi who was struggling to crawl out from the wall, to stiffen all over. How? How terrifying! Wei Xiangxi's pretty face was deathly pale. There was a trace of fear in her phoenix eyes. If she still did not know how terrifying Xiaobai was, then she would really be a brainless person with big breasts. This black-hearted store was indeed terrifying. It was only a puppet, yet it was able to oppress her to the point where she could not even retaliate. Within the quiet alleyway, only the sound of Wei Xiangxi's heavy breathing due to Xiaobai's terrifying pressure could be heard. Amidst this breathing sound, the sound of footsteps could be heard. At the entrance of the alleyway, a ramrod-straight figure was slowly walking toward them at a leisurely pace. Wei Xiangxi turned her head around with difficulty. When she saw the face of the approaching person, her phoenix eyes immediately constricted and she sucked in a breath of cold air. "Your Highness, King Yu." King Yu had a purple gold crown on his head. He was wearing an embroidered robe and a belt inlaid with jade, which vividly displayed his tall and sturdy figure. He was standing with his hands behind his back. His gaze indifferently swept over Wei Xiangxi, whose clothes were in a mess, and he frowned. "Go back. Don't embarrass yourself here," King Yu indifferently said. Then, he directly stepped over Wei Xiangxi and the others who were in a sorry state, and stepped into the store. Xiaobai did not stop King Yu, so King Yu directly stepped into the warm store. When he entered the warm store from a world of ice and snow, the warmth that instantly enveloped his skin caused King Yu to be startled. However, King Yu quickly regained his senses, and his gaze landed on Ji Qingxue, who was currently sending a piece of red braised meat into his mouth. Ji Qingxue seemed to have sensed King Yu's gaze and chuckled. He raised a piece of red braised meat in his hand toward King Yu and swallowed it in one gulp. He then drank a cup of ice-hard jade urn wine and smacked his lips. "Owner Boo, give me a serving of red braised meat and a jar of ice-hard jade urn wine as well." King Yu chuckled and nodded at Bufang. He was different from the big-breasted but brainless Wei Xiangxi. King Yu was very clear about the terror of this store. That puppet was not the store's trump card. The true trump card was the black dog that was sleeping soundly at the entrance. Therefore, King Yu would not choose to cause trouble within the store. Furthermore, he did not come today to cause trouble. Bufang gave King Yu a glance, nodded his head, and turned around to enter the kitchen. King Yu, on the other hand, stood in front of the third prince and looked down at Ji Qingxue with a gaze that carried a hint of oppression. "Why did you come back? You stayed in the foreign lands, and nothing happened at all. Why did you come back?" King Yu asked. Ji Qingxue put down his chopsticks, raised the jar of ice-hard jade urn wine, and poured the wine that was as clear as spring water into the cup. A rich aroma of wine was emitted from within, accompanied by the clear sound of wine being poured. Ji Qingxue drank a mouthful of ice-hard jade urn wine and lightly asked in reply, "Father has passed away. As a son, shouldn't I come back to mourn him?" "Mourn? You're bringing your army to camp outside the imperial city to mourn him, right?" King Yu sneered as he sat across from Ji Qingxue. His gaze suddenly turned cold. The fact that Ji Qingxue had returned and even brought his army to conquer the foreign lands with him was a little thought-provoking. Under normal circumstances, if Ji Qingxue really wanted to mourn his father, he should have returned alone on a horse. After mourning, he could return to the army. However, when Ji Qingxue returned with his army, the deeper meaning behind it was a little different. Ouyang Xiaoyi widened her eyes. She suddenly felt that the atmosphere within the store had become a little strange. She scurried to the kitchen window in order to feel a little better. The conversation between King Yu and the third prince was very lively. However, Xiaoyi felt that there was a sense of mutual hostility between them. Soon, Bufang walked out of the kitchen with a plate of red braised meat that was overflowing with the aroma of meat and a jar of wine in his other hand. After placing the wine and meat in front of King Yu nodded at Bufang. After Ji Qingxue finished eating and drinking the last cup of wine, he stood up with a slightly tipsy expression. After passing the crystals to Bufang, he put on his fur coat and walked out of the store. "Since you insist on getting involved, you should be prepared to pay the price. This price might be unbearable for you. Just as Ji Qingxue reached the entrance, King Yu eerily opened his mouth. Ji Qingxue immediately froze for a moment. He lightly exhaled, turned his head to look at King Yu, and mocked. Price? The price of my life? With a smile on his face, Ji Qingxue walked out of the store, and his figure gradually disappeared within the snowstorm. Chapter 124. After Ji Qingxue left, a travel-worn figure scuttled in from outside the door. Behind him were two other people. Bufang glanced at them and saw that they were Enai Yin and her two disciples. Enai Yin was carefully holding a wooden vegetable box in her hand and enveloped it with true energy to prevent the cold air from seeping into the box and causing the dishes inside to cool down, which would affect the taste. Owner Bu, my dish is done. Come and have a taste and see if you're satisfied. Enai Yin was very confident. Her eyes, which were like two gems on her veiled face, were flickering with brilliance. Bufang let out a soft cry of surprise. He did not expect that Enai Yin would actually bring a dish over. Since there were no customers at the moment, Bufang was rather interested. Therefore, he sat on a chair and gestured for Enai Yin to take out the dish so that he could have a look. King Yu was eating meat and drinking wine at the side when he saw Enai Yin and her two disciples. He was slightly surprised because he recognized Enai Yin. After all, this woman caused quite a ruckus last night. This hot-tempered female battle saint actually came to Owner Bu's store? Could she be in cahoots with Owner Bu? Bufang did not care about that. He was looking forward to Enai Yin's dish. It was said that she was the #1 chef in the Celestial Arcanum sect, and her dishes had conquered everyone in the Celestial Arcanum sect. To be able to conquer so many people, this woman's culinary skills should not be too bad. Enai Yin placed the wooden vegetable box on the table and then dispersed her true energy. When she opened the lid, a rich and fresh aroma immediately drifted out from the wooden box. Bufang took a deep breath, raised his eyebrows, and slightly nodded his head. Based on the aroma alone, the dish cooked by Enai Yin should taste pretty good. This aroma was even enough to make Bufang want to eat it. When Enai Yin brought out the dish, Bufang's eyes slightly narrowed. He raised his head and gave Enai Yin a profound look. This was a unique dish. It was obvious that Enai Yin had put a lot of effort into this dish. It was a fist-sized fruit with a skin that looked like fire. There was even a faint flame burning on it. This fruit had been cut open from the middle by Enai Yin. She dug out the flesh inside and replaced it with rice grains that looked like they were made of gold. The rice grains were covered with a layer of sauce. The fragrance was unique and rich, and steam was rising from it. What's the name of this dish? Bufang took a deep breath and asked. The fire tree blossoms is one of my best dishes, and it's also the dish that I have the most stable control over spirit energy. This dish can probably store around 30% more spirit energy. Enai Yin introduced with a serious expression. This was a dish that contained spirit energy. Bufang took it seriously because this dish was very similar to the dishes he cooked. Not only was the taste unique, but it also contained spirit energy. Bufang took a blue and white porcelain spoon and gently scooped up a spoonful of rice grains that looked like gold. This was not egg-fried rice, but the aroma it emitted was not inferior to the egg-fried rice cooked by Bufang. Its aroma contained a lot of fruit fragrance, and there was also a unique sour sauce flavor. When the gold-like rice grains were stuffed into the mouth, they were unexpectedly fragrant. Moreover, they were very springy, just like a type of soft candy. They were very soft and bouncy. When one bit, one would feel these rice grains bouncing between the teeth, giving off a unique texture. The taste was also not bad. It was mixed with the flavor of the fruit and sauce, and it instantly enveloped the taste buds. Not bad. Bufang's eyes lit up. He scooped up 2 more spoonfuls and put them into his mouth. After tasting it, he praised. This fire tree blossoms was indeed cooked well. Even though the amount of spirit energy it contained was very low, even lower than the 1 crystal egg-fried rice in the store, the taste was amazing. The fruit I chose is a 2nd-grade spirit fruit, the fire spirit fruit. Its flesh and skin are two different colors, but the taste is very harmonious. It is sweet and sour, and it contains spirit energy. This golden rice was soaked in the honey of the flamehead bee and cooked together with the flesh of the fire spirit fruit. After wrapping the rice with the spirit fruit and steaming it for a period of time, the fire tree blossoms was completed. And Ayin was quite proud. Bufang asked her to take out her signature dish, so she took it out. She wanted to conquer Bufang. However, in the next moment, the complacent expression on her face froze. Bufang rubbed his chin, glanced at her, and said, "The taste of your dish is not bad, and the taste is also very unique. However, there are still many flaws. You used the fire spirit fruit to wrap the golden rice and steamed it. The timing of the steaming had to be very precise, and you also had to ensure that every grain of rice had been soaked in honey. It is obvious that you did not notice the flaws during this step." Once Bufang started his evaluation, he would not show the slightest bit of mercy. Even Ai Yin herself did not know that there were actually so many flaws in her dish. The main problem is that I did not control the spirit energy well. If I could increase the concentration of spirit energy, this dish would definitely be more delicious. And Ai Yin said, somewhat unconvinced. Bufang glanced at her and lightly replied, "Spirit energy cannot completely determine the taste of a dish. Could it be that without spirit energy, it is impossible to cook a delicious dish? This is clearly not in line with the concept of a chef." Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao were dumbstruck as they stood behind an Ai Yin. Their faces were filled with astonishment. This was the first time they saw their master's culinary skills being pointed out so many flaws by someone, as expected of a senior. Therefore, I suggest that you start practicing from the most basic dishes. When you're able to cook ordinary dishes that do not require spirit energy to satisfy the masses, it means that you have improved. This was Bufang's suggestion to Ai Yin. It was a suggestion that made Ai Yin ponder for a long time. Night fell. The heavy snow that had fallen for an entire day finally stopped. In the cold night, only the whistling cold wind was left, blowing at the silence of the surroundings. In the end, Bufang did not choose to teach Ai Yin how to cook dishes that required spirit energy. Instead, he told her to practice cooking dishes that did not require spirit energy every day. When she was satisfied with it, she could come back to him again. The light in the kitchen was dense and auspicious. Bufang carefully began to practice cooking the medicinal cuisine. Because Xiaoyu only gave him one set of ingredients, without absolute confidence, Bufang did not dare to rashly start. After all, even he would make mistakes at times. Steam rose and filled the entire kitchen. The rich smell of abalone and the medicinal fragrance intertwined with each other. The night passed while he was cooking the elixir cuisine. The next day, Bufang woke up early as usual and began to practice the Big Dipper carving technique. Every day, he would complete the training tasks assigned by the system. That was because Bufang knew that there were no shortcuts to success. Every success required extraordinary effort. If he wanted to become the god of cooking that stood at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world, it was not something that could be achieved with just words. The restaurant opened for business as usual and ended as usual. At night, it was time for Bufang to practice the elixir cuisine again. Finally, the third day arrived while he was practicing. On this day, Bufang also began to prepare the elixir cuisine with real ingredients. He was going to cook this elixir cuisine that could heal mental injuries. Xiao Mansion. Xiao Meng suddenly received an invitation from the third prince. It seemed like he wanted to discuss something important. With the current unstable situation in the imperial city, Xiao Meng did not dare to be negligent. He left the Xiao Mansion and headed toward the third prince's mansion. Not long after Xiao Meng left, Xiao Yu, who was wearing a black veil and bamboo hat, stood proudly in the snowstorm with his long sword in hand. His gaze was fixed on the majestic Xiao Mansion. Chapter 125. In the depths of the Xiao Mansion, between the pavilions and waterside pavilions, snowflakes fluttered down from the sky and the cold wind rustled. In a luxurious house, Candles were lit during the day, and a stove was burning, causing the temperature inside the house to rise to a rather warm level. An incense burner was placed in front of the window. The wooden window was propped open, and the smoke from the incense burner lingered in the air, bringing with it a faint fragrance that enveloped the entire house. A delicate figure draped in a fur cloak was sitting cross-legged beside the incense burner. A zither was placed in front of her. Her delicate, jade-like hands were nimbly dancing on the zither, like an otherworldly fairy. The melodious sound of the zither drifted out, pleasing to the ears like pearls falling on a jade plate. Anyone who heard it could not help but be intoxicated. There was a hint of sorrow on Xiao Yinyu's beautiful face. Her jade-like fingers played the zither, and her thoughts seemed to have transformed into musical notes that drifted out from the sound of the zither. Her fine black bangs spread down her face, covering half of her fairy-like face. "Sister, you're playing the zither in Mother's room again. Aren't you afraid of disturbing Mother?" Xiao Xiaolong's figure walked in from outside the door. He patted the snow off his body and whispered to the person playing the zither. The sound of the zither paused, followed by a sigh. "If only I could really disturb Mother, then I would play the zither every day." Xiao Yinyu's beautiful eyes glanced at Xiao Xiaolong, and she snappily said, "Brat, aren't you being forced by Father to cultivate? Why do you have the time to come and chat today?" "Hee, Father went to find the third prince. Let me rest today. These days have tired my body out. By the way, sister, why don't we go to Owner Boo's place for a meal? I haven't been there for a long time, and I'm craving for it," Xiao Xiaolong said. Xiao Yinyu rolled her eyes at Xiao Xiaolong. This was the real reason why Xiao Xiaolong came to find her. He was a scholar of the imperial city, but he was just a foodie. "Yum? Who is it?" Xiao Yinyu was about to scold Xiao Xiaolong, but her expression suddenly changed. She abruptly looked out of the window and shouted. Amidst the wind and snow, a figure slowly emerged from the frozen surface of the pond. His pitch-black robe fluttered in the cold wind, and a bamboo hat covered his face, making it difficult to see his appearance. However, when they saw this figure, the pupils of Xiao Yinyu and Xiao Xiaolong slightly shrank. Xiao Yu stood in the middle of the room, took off his bamboo hat, and exhaled a breath of white air. He looked at Xiao Yinyu and Xiao Xiaolong, who were staring at him in astonishment, and suddenly smiled. "Long time no see," Xiao Yu's hoarse voice rang out. However, what he got in response was a blast of surging vital energy. Xiao Yinyu stared at Xiao Yu with a face filled with killing intent. Her pretty face was filled with anger. Xiao Xiaolong was also looking at him with vigilance. He did not know why Xiao Yu suddenly appeared in the Xiao mansion. "How dare you come back? You still have the face to come back?" Xiao Yinyu questioned. The smile on Xiao Yu's face disappeared. He indifferently glanced at Xiao Yinyu, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and like a gust of wind, he appeared beside Xiao Yinyu. Xiao Yinyu's body stiffened. It was as if the true energy within her body had been blocked by a terrifying sword energy. She was completely unable to circulate it, and her entire body was immobilized. She could only fiercely glare at Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu gave a carefree smile and reached out his hand to pat Xiao Yinyu's head. Then, he slowly walked past her and headed toward the person who was quietly lying on the bed. "What are you trying to do?" A blush appeared on Xiao Xiaolong's fair skin. He angrily stood in front of Xiao Yu, preventing him from moving forward. You mischievous brat, you've grown up as well. You even dare to block my way." The corners of Xiao Yu's mouth curled up. Xiao Xiaolong's pupils constricted. True energy burst forth from his body, and the cultivation of a peak third-grade battle maniac was vividly displayed. He raised his hand and assumed a fighting stance. Xiao Yu tilted his head and looked at Xiao Xiaolong, who was charging toward him. A playful smile appeared on his face, and he slowly raised his hand. He extended a finger and tapped it on Xiao Xiaolong's forehead. Xiao Xiaolong's figure, which was charging forward, suddenly became sluggish. His entire body was sent flying, and he staggered to the ground. "Don't worry, I mean no harm." Xiao Yu's hoarse voice slowly lingered in the room. However, Xiao Yanyu did not believe him. Her body was completely immobilized. She was so anxious that she wanted to scream out loud. Xiao Yu walked to the bedside. An incense burner was placed there, and a graceful and tranquil woman was quietly lying on the bed. Her eyes were closed, and she was fast asleep. The woman had a pretty face. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that she bore some resemblance to Xiao Yanyu. Xiao Yu's gaze was a little complicated. He lightly sighed, took off his heavy black cloak, and draped it over the woman's body. You can't take my mother away." Xiao Xiaolong struggled to crawl up from the ground. However, when Xiao Yu raised his hand, an invisible pressure once again pressed down on his body, causing him to once again sit on the ground. He could only watch with eyes wide open as Xiao Yu brought his mother, Ji Ru'er, away. Xiao Yinyu's entire body was trembling. She bit her red lips tightly and glared at Xiao Yu with rage in her eyes. Xiao Yu carried Xiao Yinyu on his back and walked to the door. He turned his head to glance at the two of them and said with a smile, "The two of you are still cuter when you were younger. Don't worry, I really mean no harm. I will wake my mother up." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Yu once again put on his bamboo hat. His figure leaped and disappeared from the door, leaving only the rustling cold wind blowing in from outside. The sword energy on her body suddenly dissipated. Xiao Yinyu's figure trembled for a moment, and she jogged all the way to the door. She looked at the pure white snow, but Xiao Yu's figure was nowhere to be seen. Buzz! After a while, a figure walked through the air, and the snowstorm seemed to have stopped. Xiao Meng's face was gloomy as he landed in the small courtyard. When he saw Xiao Xiaolong, who was paralyzed on the ground, and Xiao Yinyu, who was on the verge of tears, anger immediately welled up in his chest. "Father, mother was taken away." When Xiao Yinyu saw Xiao Meng, the grievances in her heart immediately vented out. "Xiao Yu," a murderous look flashed across Xiao Meng's eyes. However, he became even more suspicious in his heart. Ji Qingxue had asked him to go to the mansion to discuss some matters. He had just left, and Xiao Yu had already arrived. There was definitely something strange going on. Xiao Meng's figure turned around and instantly rushed out of the Xiao mansion. He stood proudly in the sky above the mansion. The snowstorm around him could not approach him as his eyes scanned the surroundings like lightning. Xiao Meng's heart slightly shook. He took a step forward and stepped on the air as he sped toward the distance. Xiao Yu carried his mother, Ji Ru'er, on his back. His true energy surged and covered his body, blocking out the swirling snowflakes so that his mother would not be frozen. He slowly walked toward the alleyway. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion came from behind him. Xiao Yu was startled for a moment. A sharp sword energy burst out from his body and soared into the sky. It transformed into an indistinct, long sword and slashed at the shadow of a fist behind him. Bang! Xiao Yu's sword energy suddenly collapsed. His body slightly trembled, and he quickened his pace toward the alleyway. Fang Fang's little store was not far away. Xiao Meng landed on the ground with a face full of anger. He looked at the frantically fleeing Xiao Yu and angrily shouted, "Unfilial son, where do you think you're going?" With a sway of his body, as if the ground had shrunk to an inch, Xiao Meng's figure rapidly approached Xiao Yu, leaving behind several afterimages in an instant. A terrifying pressure rolled toward him and scattered the surrounding snowstorm. Xiao Yu turned around and unsheathed a long sword. The light from the sword was dazzling and eye-catching. He pinched the fingers of a sword with one hand, and the sword split into 4 swords, forming a sword array. Xiao Yu then pushed out the sword array and charged toward the approaching Xiao Meng. This time, Xiao Meng did not hold back in the slightest. He struck out with his palm. His palm was as clear as jade, and there seemed to be a brilliance circulating within it. He directly crushed the sword array. Xiao Yu let out a groan. Borrowing the force of the impact, he rushed to the entrance of the store and entered Fang Fang's little store. Xiao Meng was already boiling with anger. True energy surged in his hands, and he was about to blast it toward the store. However, a large black dog lying on the ground lazily glanced at him and snorted. With a wave of its small and exquisite paw, the true chi on Xiao Meng's palm that was as translucent as jade was suddenly shattered. Xiao Meng felt as if he had been struck by a huge force and was forced to take a few steps back. Xiao Meng felt as if a basin of ice-cold water had been poured over him. He came to his senses and realized that Xiao Yu had entered Bufang's store. Chapter 126. Xiao Yu actually brought Ru'er into Fong Fong's little store? What is that kid trying to do? Seeing Xiao Yu enter Fong Fong's little store, Xiao Meng instead heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that since Xiao Yu chose to enter the store, he naturally would not harm Ji Ru'er. Xiao Meng's expression became grave as he looked at the lazy, big black dog at the entrance when he felt the terrifying pressure dispersing his true energy. He cupped his fists toward Blackie and apologized for his disrespect earlier. If someone were to witness this scene, they would definitely be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the ground. The #1 expert of the Light Wind Empire was actually apologizing to a big black dog. This was simply a blinding scene. Blackie glanced at Xiao Meng, snorted, yawned, and went back to sleep. Xiao Meng also felt the pressure surrounding him suddenly dissipate, and he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. After fearfully glancing at Blackie, Xiao Meng turned around and entered Bufang's store. Bufang took out the 2 ingredients given to him by Xiao Yu from the system storage space, the Amethyst Heart Orchid and the Sky Spirit Abalone. The Amethyst Heart Orchid's entire body was emitting a translucent purple color with a faint burning aura. It did not seem very conspicuous, but once one closed one's eyes, one could feel the energy radiating from the Amethyst Heart Orchid like a small sun. The Sky Spirit Abalone was slightly larger than the Black Spirit Abalone. Furthermore, the spirit energy contained within the Sky Spirit Abalone was richer. After all, it was a 5th-grade spirit beast, so its preciousness was naturally incomparable to that of the Black Spirit Abalone. Furthermore, the patterns on the shell of the Sky Spirit Abalone were more complicated than the Black Spirit Abalone. It was obvious that the magic array was of a higher grade. Since Bufang had already cooked the Amethyst Spirit Abalone twice with substitute ingredients, he had already memorized the cooking steps of the Amethyst Spirit Abalone soup. Furthermore, according to the difference in the amount of spirit energy contained within the 2 ingredients, Bufang also made corresponding adjustments to the true energy cooking method. After cleaning the Sky Spirit Abalone, Bufang took out a large clay pot. Only this clay pot could contain the Sky Spirit Abalone. Using the dragon bone kitchen knife, Bufang made a cut on the Sky Spirit Abalone's meat. After making an opening, he chopped up the other spirit herbs and placed them around the Sky Spirit Abalone. Then, he poured in some heavenly mountain spring water and covered the Sky Spirit Abalone with the lid. During the boiling time, Bufang began to prepare the Amethyst Heart Orchid. This was an orchid. Its flower bud was blue, and its petals were plump. Its branches and leaves were also plump, as if it contained an enormous amount of energy. Twirling the dragon bone kitchen knife, Bufang carefully separated the petals and leaves. He made a cut on each of the plump heart orchid's petals. Immediately, a thick purple juice flowed out from the cut. That juice actually carried a slight burning sensation. When one's skin got close to it, it felt as if they were being roasted by charcoal, giving off a kind of burning sensation. Taking out a jade cup, Bufang poured all of the juice from the heart orchid's petals into it. It just so happened that the cup was filled to the brim. The purple liquid was sparkling and translucent, giving off a rich aroma. Gulp, gulp. The clay pot was already boiling. When Bufang uncovered the lid, the rich aroma of the Sky Spirit Abalone immediately burst forth, causing him to involuntarily take in a deep breath. The fragrance of the Sky Spirit Abalone did not have the fishy smell of ordinary seafood. Instead, it was incomparably sweet. Before he even tasted it, the sweetness had already reached his heart, causing his entire body and mind to relax. After chopping up the Amethyst Heart Orchid's leaves and pouring them into the clay pot, Bufang covered it with a lid. His expression became serious. With one hand covering the lid of the clay pot, the true energy vortex within his dantian naturally rotated. True energy scattered in all directions, emitting a lustrous radiance above his palm. Then it began to flow into the clay pot. In Bufong's mind, the scene within the clay pot suddenly became vivid and lifelike, as if it was happening right in front of his eyes. The flow of true energy incited the spirit energy within the clay pot to continuously revolve and began to seep into the sky spirit abalone's flesh. The small cut on the abalone's flesh actually slightly opened up, emitting small bubbles. When the bubbles burst, spirit energy burst forth. Seeing this scene, Bufong was relieved. He continued to use his true energy to incite the spirit energy to envelop the sky spirit abalone. Soon, the first stage of cooking was completed. Tiny beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Compared to the substitute ingredient cooking, the true sky spirit abalone required much more true energy, causing even Bufong to feel a little strenuous. When the lid of the clay pot was removed, the fragrance became even more intense. There seemed to be a faint radiance circulating within the clay pot. This was because after Bufong activated his true energy, the spirit array on the sky spirit abalone's shell began to circulate. After tossing the petals of the amethyst heart orchid into the clay pot, the scalding soup immediately engulfed the petals. Bufong picked up a jade cup. The warm jade cup was slightly scalding, so he poured the juice inside into the clay pot. In an instant, the fragrance within the clay pot doubled. Faced with the fragrance, even Bufong felt a little comfortable and wanted to moan. He moaned. This comfortable feeling didn't affect his physical body, but his spirit. When two ingredients that could heal mental injuries were combined together, the amount of magic that burst forth was unimaginable. After putting the lid back on the clay pot, Bufong began to use the true energy cooking method to cook the elixir cuisine. At this stage, the elixir cuisine was basically completed. As for the degree of completion, it would depend on Bufong's mastery of true energy cooking. However, after 3 days of practice, Bufong was already confident that he could complete this elixir cuisine. Xiao Meng stepped into the store. The warmth surged, but the coldness on his face did not melt in the slightest. He was still coldly staring at Xiao Yu, who was sitting on a chair. Xiao Yu clutched his chest and lightly gasped for breath. True energy surged on his palm, healing the injuries in his body. What exactly do you want to do? Is it not enough for you to hurt Ruo? What else do you want to do? Could it be that you really want to kill your mother to prove your Tao? Xiao Meng's voice was as cold as an iceberg, and every word was filled with anger. However, Xiao Yu lightly smiled and shook his head. He looked at Xiao Meng with a complicated gaze and indifferently said, "Father, you know my goal. Today, I came to Mr. Fong's place not to hurt my mother, but to save her." "Save her?" Xiao Meng was startled. Then his pupils constricted as he said, "You want Owner Bu to cook the elixir cuisine to save Ruer?" "No, that sage herb phoenix chicken soup is useless for Ruer's injuries. You should know very well that not only did that sword strike of yours split her heart, it also heavily injured Ruer's spirit." Xiao Meng sighed and shook his head. The corners of Xiao Yu's mouth twitched. He did not say anything and turned his head toward the direction of the kitchen. In the pitch-black kitchen, a slender and thin figure walked out. He was carrying a clay pot with both his hands. Steam was rising from the clay pot, and the steam was accompanied by a rich fragrance. As the fragrance wafted through the air, everyone in the store subconsciously took a deep breath. They immediately felt refreshed and spirited. Xiao Meng was pleasantly surprised as he stared at the clay pot. This fragrance. It was obvious that the elixir cuisine this time was not the sage herb phoenix chicken soup. Bufong glanced at Xiao Meng, who was standing at the entrance, in astonishment. Then, he carried the clay pot to Xiao Yu and placed it down. Only when he let go of the clay pot did Bufong stop circulating the true energy within his body and let out a long breath. After cooking this amethyst spirit abalone soup, Bufong felt as if his entire body was about to collapse. The true energy vortex within his dantian was almost dried up. He could not help but sigh in his heart. As expected, his cultivation was still too weak. "Your amethyst spirit abalone soup is done. Please enjoy," Bu Fong said to Xiao Yu. Then, he carefully opened the lid of the clay pot. Rays of light immediately shone out from the clay pot, accompanied by a strong fragrance that was like a storm. It was dazzling and eye-catching. Chapter 127. This dish could actually light up. Xiao Meng and Xiao Yu were both dumbstruck. They were completely attracted by the splendor and fragrance in front of them. Within the clay pot, beams of light seemed to break out of the cocoon as they filled their eyes. It was so dazzling and eye-catching. The brilliance only lasted for a breath's time before vanishing. Steaming white steam gushed out from the clay pot like a tangible fragrance. Xiao Yu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He felt that the injuries caused by Xiao Meng had healed in an instant. He didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. His gaze fell on the dish in the clay pot. This amethyst spirit abalone soup was not a thick soup and was different from the sage herb phoenix chicken soup. It was not greasy and was instead very refreshing. The soup was clear and transparent like a clear spring in the mountains. It was incomparably sweet, and even the sky spirit abalone at the bottom of the soup could be clearly seen. After the sky spirit abalone was cooked, its meat was turned over and emitted a rich fragrance. There were no other impurities in the broth. The amethyst heart orchid was completely melted into the broth, and not even a trace of residue was left. It was as if this amethyst spirit abalone soup was directly boiled with sky spirit abalone and Tianshan spring water. Bu Fong took a small celadon bowl and scooped some soup with a porcelain spoon. The soup was so clear that if it wasn't for the steam and the rich aroma, one would have thought that it was really boiling water. When Xiao Yu received the porcelain bowl from Bu Fong, he finally came back to his senses. He helped his mother, who was leaning against the chair, to sit up straight. Xiao Meng, who was beside him, took a step forward and directly took the porcelain bowl from Xiao Yu's hands. The face of Xiao Meng, the #1 expert of the empire, had long since lost its calmness and calmness. There was only caution and worry. With trembling hands, he scooped up a spoonful of soup and slowly fed it to Ji Ru'er. Xiao Meng's heart was in his throat as he unblinkingly stared at Ji Ru'er's pale face. All of a sudden, his eyes abruptly burst forth with a bright light. This was because he noticed that after Ji Ru'er drank the spoonful of soup, a hint of redness surfaced on her pale face. This was something that had never happened before. It worked. It really worked. Xiao Meng was so excited that he almost spilled the soup in his bowl. He quickly calmed himself down and continued to feed Ji Ru'er the soup. One spoonful at a time, she was very careful, as if she was protecting her most precious possession. Bu Fong glanced at the two of them. Then he used his chopsticks to scoop up the sky spirit abalone from the bottom of the clay pot. He pinched the shell of the sky spirit abalone. The magic array on the shell was emitting a fluorescent light. It was slightly hot, and the abalone was trembling. Green smoke curled up from Bu Fong's hand as the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared. With a twirl of a knife, Bu Fong chopped the sky spirit abalone into small pieces. "Feed it to her. This sky spirit abalone has absorbed the efficacy of the amethyst heart orchid and many other spirit herbs. Under the catalysis of the spirit array, the healing effect should be better." Bu Fong handed the spirit abalone to Xiao Meng and said. Xiao Meng gratefully glanced at Bu Fong, then fed the spirit abalone meat into Ji Ru'er's mouth. Immediately, Ji Ru'er, who had been motionless all this while, slightly trembled. She opened her mouth and let out a soft breath. This breath contained a surging amount of rich spirit energy, causing the entire store to be filled with a rich fragrance. Xiao Meng became even more excited. Under his excited gaze, Ji Ru'er's long eyelashes trembled and her eyes slowly opened. The chill was getting colder and colder. The snowflakes were getting thicker and thicker, covering the streets of the imperial city with white snow. On the long street, two figures were slowly walking. Ji Qingxue was wearing a long white robe with a fur cloak draped over his shoulders as he walked amidst the wind and snow. Beside him was a majestic man wearing a short-sleeved linen shirt. The man had a wild beard and his eyes were like copper bells. The two of them slowly walked, leaving behind a trail of footprints on the long street. "Your Highness, tomorrow is the late Emperor's funeral, yet Chief Eunuch Lien called the three princes into the palace today. Could it be that he is going to announce His Majesty's will?" The tall and burly man with a full beard said in a muffled voice. As Ji Qingsha slowly walked, he gave the man a glance and said with a gentle smile, "Perhaps. However, regardless of the contents of the will, those two brothers of mine will definitely fight it out." The man with a full beard glanced at Ji Qingxue and suddenly asked, "Your Highness, do you think the late emperor will pass the throne to you in his will?" When Ji Qingxue heard this question, he was immediately startled. His entire body also stopped walking and stood on the spot. The wind and snow were howling and the cold wind was rustling. "Impossible. He has no reason to pass the throne to me. After all, I'm the son he hated the most," Ji Qingxue indifferently said. His voice was distant and filled with sigh. Then, Ji Qingxue continued walking forward. The man with a full beard immediately stopped talking and followed behind him toward the majestic main hall. At the entrance of the gate of heavenly mystery, King Yu was standing ramrod straight. He wore a purple gold crown on his head and had a belt inlaid with jade wrapped around his waist. He was in high spirits. Behind him was a respectful middle-aged man. The man had a flattering smile on his face, and with a single glance, one could tell he was a quick-witted person. This person was the Minister of Finance of the imperial city, Sun Qing. King Yu glanced at Ji Qingxue, who was slowly approaching from afar, and sneered. He turned around and stepped into the gate of heavenly mystery and walked toward the main hall. The gate of heavenly mystery was incomparably wide. The plaza was covered in pure white snow. Only two stone pillars with engravings on them stood upright. The top of the stone pillars was also covered in white snow. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast expanse of whiteness. On the plaza of the gate of heavenly mystery, there were a few eunuchs sweeping away the accumulated snow. Since the emperor's funeral was tomorrow, the snow would obstruct the path to the imperial mausoleum because they would have to pass through the gate of heavenly mystery. Within the majestic yet somewhat awe-inspiring main hall, there were many figures moving about. These figures were all high-ranking officials of the imperial court, and all of them were reputable figures within the Light Wind Empire. The minister of the left was wearing a court robe and was standing with a solemn expression. His eyes were slightly narrowed, as if he was resting. The Ouyang family, the Yang family, the Minister of Finance, and other high-ranking officials of the imperial court were also standing in silence, silently waiting for the appearance of Chief Eunuch Lien Fu. They knew that today was definitely not an ordinary day. The emperor's posthumous edict, which had been kept a secret for so long, would have to be announced eventually. This would also decide the final owner of the throne. What if it was the crown prince? Or King Yu? Many of the officials who were already standing in their positions were extremely perturbed. As for the third prince, none of the officials thought highly of him. That was because the previous emperor's attitude toward the third prince gave him a feeling of disgust and disregard. Therefore, in the opinion of everyone, including Ji Qingxue himself, the possibility of him inheriting the throne was the lowest. The three princes were all standing below the main hall. The golden dragon throne was right in front of them, and they only needed to take a step forward to stand above everyone else. Suddenly, the hall that was originally filled with chatter abruptly became silent. The crowd parted and Lien Fu respectfully held the imperial edict in his hands as he slowly walked in from outside the main hall. His expression was solemn, and he did not smile, causing people to involuntarily feel a chill run down their spines. After all, he was an expert at the 7th grade battle saint level. His mood could already affect the mood of the people around him. "Eunuch, is this father's posthumous edict?" The crown prince looked at the imperial edict in Lien Fu's hands and could not help but ask for confirmation. Lien Fu gave the crown prince a glance and solemnly nodded. The crown prince was immediately overjoyed because he felt that the possibility of his father passing the throne to him was the highest. It was not only because he was the crown prince, but also because the emperor favored him the most when he was still alive. Lien Fu pinched his thumb and middle finger together, flicked his horsetail whisk, and hung it between his hands. Then, he gently unfolded the imperial edict and rolled up the posthumous edict. He stood in front of the dragon throne and prepared to read it out. Below, everyone held their breaths as they stared at Lien Fu, who was in front of the dragon throne, waiting for the final owner of the throne. Chapter 128. Lien Fu rolled up the imperial edict and lightly coughed. His voice reverberated throughout the hall, causing everyone to involuntarily feel nervous. Everyone's attention was focused on him with their own unique expressions. The crown prince's face was brimming with confidence. His eyes were flickering as if victory was within his grasp. King Yu, on the other hand, had an indifferent expression, as if he did not care about the final posthumous edict in the slightest. Ji Qingxue lowered his head and played with his slender fingers. Zhao Mushing stood rooted to the spot with his eyes narrowed and his body slightly swayed. Elder Ouyang pursed his lips and stared with his eyes wide open. In the imperial court, everyone had a different expression on their faces. However, without exception, their minds were all drawn by Lien Fu's movements as they earnestly listened to the posthumous edict that Lien Fu was about to recite. The third prince, Cheng Xue, has a noble character and deeply respects me. He will definitely inherit the throne. He will succeed me in ascending to the throne. Lien Fu's sharp voice reverberated throughout the hall. The posthumous edict was not long. The first half was merely Emperor Changfeng recalling his life's accomplishments. Everyone was well aware of this, but their focus was not on this. Instead, they were focused on the final victor of the throne and who the emperor favored. Was it the crown prince? Or was it King Yu? However, when Lien Fu recited the last sentence, the entire imperial court became terrifyingly quiet. One could hear a pin drop. Everyone was dumbfounded. His Majesty's edict favored the third prince? This was like a bolt from the blue that crashed into the hall with a boom. Everyone was a little dumbfounded. The crown prince's expression completely froze. His eyes were wide open and his face was filled with disbelief. His mouth was slightly agape, as if he was wondering if he had misheard. King Yu was also stunned. He turned his head to look at Ji Qingxue beside him with a deep sense of disbelief swirling within his eyes. Zhao Mushing's narrowed eyes widened. Elder Ouyang almost pulled off his beard. The Minister of Finance's flattering smile froze, and he almost bit his own tongue. This was an outcome that exceeded everyone's expectations. No one could have imagined that the prince who had been exiled by the emperor to fight in the outer realms, who had always been looked down upon and even hated, would actually become the last prince to inherit the throne. Ha ha ha! Just when the hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop, a burst of laughter suddenly rang out. The bearded man standing next to Ji Qingxue could not help but throw his head back and laugh out loud. Now you know who the final winner is. Look at King Yu's dumbfounded expression. Where did all of your previous arrogance go? The man with sideburns was delighted. Looking at the unsightly expressions of the crown prince and King Yu that were filled with constipation, he could not help but laugh heartily. Previously, outside the gate of heavenly mystery, King Yu's disdainful gaze deeply provoked the man with sideburns. Ji Qingxue was also slightly taken aback. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up as he patted the shoulder of the bearded man beside him and softly said, "Don't mess around. We're in the main hall." The bearded man stopped laughing, but the smile on his face could not be wiped away. Although Lien Fu had read the posthumous edict, he did not know its contents. It was only at this moment that it was announced. Even he was incomparably stunned. He did not expect that the emperor would choose the third prince in the end. Following that, Ji Qingxue tidied up his clothes and solemnly stepped forward to receive the posthumous edict with a solemn expression. The crown prince furiously snorted, flicked his sleeves, and left with a livid expression. King Yu also gave Ji Qingxue a profound glance before expressionlessly leaving. The most unexpected outcome caused everyone to be unable to regain their senses. The ministers in the imperial court were already somewhat hesitant because they had already chosen a side. However, there was a change in the line of succession. Zhao Mushing left. Before he left, he gave Ji Qingxue a deep look. That look was filled with deep meaning. They walked out of the main hall and passed through the gate of heavenly mystery. It was still the same two figures walking in the snowstorm. Ji Qingxue was momentarily silent. His mood was completely different from when he first arrived. The bearded man was laughing heartily. He was very happy for the third prince. There were very few people on the 10-mile-long street. As the snow drifted down, the cold wind rustled. Jingle, jingle. The clear and melodious ringing of bells reverberated throughout the long street. Ji Qingxue and the bearded man stopped in their tracks and stood still. Right in front of them, 5 beautiful women with voluptuous figures were leisurely walking over. There was a ring of bells hanging from their jade-like feet. As they walked, the bells emitted a ringing sound. This sound seemed to possess some sort of magical power that stirred one's heart. The bearded man angrily glared at them. He took a step forward and stood in front of Ji Qingxue. The beard on his face flared up in anger as he took a deep breath and bellowed, "You conjugal witches, get out of my way!" His voice was like a clap of thunder, as if it had transformed into an invisible sound wave. The sound of the bells was immediately overshadowed by the explosion, shattering all the snow in the sky. Wei Xiangxi and the 4 sisters behind her all stopped in their tracks and swayed their bodies. Pink true energy burst forth from their bodies and transformed into a true energy veil that wrapped around them. "King Yu, how dare you? How dare you collude with a sect to assassinate the successor of the late emperor? Is this a rebellion?" The bearded man angrily roared. Behind Ji Qingxue and the bearded man, the sound of light footsteps rang out. Han Qianyun, who was wrapped in a black robe, appeared with the spirit fire in his eye sockets pulsating. "If your highness didn't become the successor, King Yu might not have sent us. If you want to blame someone, blame your status as the successor." Han Qianyun's hoarse voice rang out. Then a surge of true energy surged out from his body and pressed toward Ji Qingxue. "Kakik, finally, it's time to make a move. I'm so suffocating." The Bone King's figure climbed out from the walls of the surrounding houses like a gecko as his laughter resounded. This was a hopeless situation. The experts from the 3 demonic sects that King Yu colluded with were actually brazenly lying in ambush on the long street of the imperial city. It seemed like King Yu had already decided to give up. Today, the 3 parties were not there to chat with Ji Qingxue. Instead, they truly wanted to take Ji Qingxue's life. The sharp killing intent that was wrapped up in the cold wind caused goosebumps to appear on Ji Qingxue's skin. This was a deliberate ambush aimed at him. The bearded man started laughing. His eyes were as wide as copper bells, and the terrifying aura of a 6th-grade battle emperor burst out from his body. "A bunch of reckless fools. Since you're courting death, Grandpa will grant your wish. Your Highness, hurry up and leave," the man with sideburns shouted. The linen clothes on his body were immediately torn apart, and his muscles bulged. His entire body suddenly grew taller and turned into a giant. His true energy turned boiling hot, and the snowflakes that fell on his skin instantly melted. With a ferocious stomp of his foot, the accumulated snow on the ground shattered and the green bricks on the ground cracked and caved in. The fully bearded man transformed into a shadow as he domineeringly charged towards Wei Xiangxi and the others who were blocking his way. With a solemn expression, Ji Qingxue tapped the ground with the tips of his feet and rapidly followed behind the bearded man. With a punch that sounded like the angry roar of a raging bull, a terrifying gust of wind that carried true energy directly scattered the true energy pillars of Wei Xiangxi and the others. The enormous force immediately crashed into the group of 5 women, causing them to cry out in alarm. Then, the bearded man turned around. The muscles all over his body were densely packed like dragons as he said to Ji Qingxue, "Your Highness, I'll cover you. Hurry up and leave." Ji Qingxue frowned as he glanced at the bearded man. In the end, He made up his mind, clenched his teeth, turned around, and sped away. Han Qinyun and the others hurriedly charged forward to deal with Ji Qingxue. However, the entire ground seemed to tremble as the bearded man took a step forward. His fists collided with a domineering roar. "Damn it, a bunch of trash. If you want to kill His Highness, you'll have to step over my dead body first." Han Qinyun and the others were enraged. One after another, surging true energy immediately charged toward the bearded man. In merely an instant, the bearded man was completely submerged by the terrifying true energy. Ji Qingxue's rapid steps slowed down and eventually came to a complete stop as he stood on the spot. It was not that he did not want to move forward, but rather a figure was standing nearby with his hands behind his back. King Yu slowly turned around and calmly gazed at Ji Qingxue. "Third brother, I really didn't expect that the person my father chose in the end would actually be you," Ji Qingyu indifferently said. His tone was very calm. However, it was precisely this calmness that caused the pores all over Ji Qingxue's body to tighten. He felt an unprecedented sense of danger. Chapter 129. The aura on King Yu's body was constantly rising. Even his jet black hair was fluttering despite the absence of wind. Surging true energy floated around his body, easily scattering the falling snowflakes. Ji Qingxue felt goosebumps all over his body as he faced the pressure coming from King Yu's body. His cultivation was only at the 5th grade Battle King level. Facing King Yu, who had already broken through to the 6th grade Battle Emperor level, he was still somewhat powerless. "You want to kill me?" Ji Qingxue calmly asked. King Yu's gaze was cold and merciless without the slightest trace of emotion. He expressionlessly looked at Ji Qingxue and said, "I've already warned you not to get involved in this mess. Otherwise, you'll have to pay a price you won't be able to bear. You just won't listen." Ji Qingxue grinned and took off the heavy overcoat on his body. A trace of hostility appeared on his face, which had always been gentle. This hostility made him look somewhat sinister. "Ever since you were young, you've always been high and mighty. You think you're better than everyone else in everything, right? If you want to fight, then let's fight. In any case, we'll have to fight sooner or later," Ji Qingxue sneered. The true energy on his body began to fluctuate as well. He fiercely stomped his foot on the ground, causing the snowflakes covering the ground to scatter. "Among us 3 princes, my cultivation level is the highest. What do you have to fight against me?" King Yu grinned as his figure instantly charged forward. Bang, bang, bang. The two of them were entangled in a chaotic battle. True energy continuously poured out as they collided, causing the surroundings to tremble. In this cold world of ice and snow, they were actually fighting fiercely. However, Ji Qingxue was only a 5th grade Battle King. There was still a gap between his strength and King Yu's. After spitting out a mouthful of boiling red blood, Ji Qingxue's figure continuously retreated and fiercely crashed into the wall, causing the entire wall to collapse. King Yu coldly smiled as true energy enshrouded his palm. "Farewell, my little brother." King Yu's gaze was merciless as he pushed out his palm toward Ji Qingxue, who was within the ruins. King Yu was confident that Ji Qingxue would definitely die if this attack landed. Ji Qingxue stared at King Yu with a hint of bitterness at the corner of his mouth. It was said that the imperial family had no relatives, but it was truly heartless. However, just as King Yu was about to kill Ji Qingxue with a palm strike, a wave of pressure suddenly spread out, causing King Yu's entire body to stiffen. Under that pressure, the palm strike he sent out also collapsed. A figure walked over from the sky and appeared between King Yu and Ji Qingxue, blocking King Yu's palm strike. "Xiao Meng, you want to stop me?" King Yu's pupils constricted as he looked at the newcomer in disbelief. It was as if the light of Buddha was illuminating everything and enveloping Ji Qingxue. "Zhao Ma Sheng." Ji Qingxue fiercely bit the tip of his tongue. The smell of blood permeated the air, causing him to suddenly sober up and clearly see the appearance of the person who was slowly walking toward him. Zhao Mushing had a peaceful expression on his face. He was like a benevolent Buddha with a smile on the corner of his mouth as he calmly looked at Ji Qingxue. "The crown prince sent you to kill me," Ji Qingxue coldly said. Zhao Mushing was one of the crown prince's men. For him to appear here at this moment, there could only be one explanation. The crown prince and king Yu had the same goal. Sticking the posthumous edict had triggered the killing intent of his two brothers. Ji Qingxue felt a burst of anger erupting from the bottom of his heart, almost bursting out from the top of his head. Zhao Mushing shook his head. His gaze was still calm as he indifferently said, "His Majesty is very smart and has always been on guard against me. I thought His Majesty would choose King Yu, but I didn't expect him to choose you. But that's fine too. It doesn't matter who he chooses. The one who ultimately ascends to the throne can only be the crown prince. You're really loyal, cultivating the cultivation technique of the Mahayana island, yet worrying about the empire's minister of the left. Aren't you tired?" Ji Qingxue sneered. Zhao Mushing indifferently looked at the sneering Ji Qingxue and slowly raised his hand. Suddenly, true energy gushed out and actually condensed into a golden Buddha statue in front of him. The Buddha statue was emitting a gentle brilliance. Zhao Mushing lightly formed a Buddha seal with his fingers and then pushed it forward. The golden Buddha statue suddenly charged into the sky and slowly sat down, enveloping Ji Qingxue. Loyalty? If he had the same ambition as King Yu, then I wouldn't have helped him. It's precisely because he's weak that I support him. Do you understand? Zhao Mushing said with a smile. All I need is an obedient puppet. When Ji Qingxue heard these words, his entire body suddenly trembled. His body that was enveloped by the Buddha statue trembled and blood flowed out from his mouth and nose. His entire body went limp on the ground, and he was on the verge of death. Zhao Mushing slowly walked toward Ji Qingxue, who was lying limp on the ground, with a sigh that bemoaned the state of the universe and pitied the fate of mankind. Suddenly, the long cry of a woman came from the sky. A jade talisman that was glowing brightly fell down and smashed toward Zhao Mushing. Buzz! Zhao Mushing's pupils constricted. He formed a Buddha seal with his hand and deftly pushed it out, blocking the jade talisman. The jade talisman trembled and then glowed, forming a simple magic array. A terrifying true energy burst out from the magic array, causing Zhao Mushing to continuously retreat several steps. The Celestial Arcanum Sect. Spirit Divination Magic Array. Zhao Mushing muttered, and then narrowed his eyes to take a closer look. A figure wrapped in a loose robe landed beside Ji Qingxue. With a wave of her fair, jade-like hand, the Buddha statue was instantly covered in cracks and shattered inch by inch. Then, Ji Qingxue was lifted up with a single hand. "You old man, it's not good to be so ruthless." After saying that, Ai Yin smiled at Zhao Mushing. Then her figure shot out and disappeared. Fong Fong's little store. Bu Fong was curled up on a chair, holding a cup of hot water and sipping from it. Suddenly, a figure dashed into the store. Ai Yin appeared before him with her long and fair legs stretched out. She conveniently threw a figure covered in blood onto the ground. "Owner Bu, this guy is the future emperor of the Light Wind Empire. However, he's about to die. You have to save him." Chapter 130. What the hell? Bu Fong gave Ai Yin a puzzled glance. Then his gaze fell on the wretched figure on the ground. He could not help but be surprised. Isn't this Ji Qingxue? Why is he in such a miserable state? Bu Fong placed the cup on the table and helped Ji Qingxue up. Ouyang Xiaoyi hurriedly ran over to help and carried Ji Qingxue to a chair so he could lie down comfortably. After doing all this, Bu Fong frowned and expressionlessly looked toward Ai Yin, who was standing at the door, and asked, "What's going on? What else could it be?" This guy was surrounded and plotted against. He was lucky to have met me. Otherwise, he would already be dead by now, and Ai Yin said as she gave Ji Qingxue a glance and regretfully shook her head. King Yu brought his companions from the sect and surrounded Ji Qingxue. His subordinates covered for him and allowed him to escape. In the end, he encountered King Yu and was almost beaten to death. Luckily, that guy with the surname Xiao appeared and saved him. However, this kid was really unlucky and encountered Zhao Masheng. Ai Yin recounted Ji Qingshue's encounter. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched as well. This Ji Qingxue was really unlucky. What kind of grudge did he have that caused him to be pursued like this? What did he do to incur the wrath of the heavens and the people? Bu Fang asked again as he glanced at Ji Qingxue, who was bleeding from all 7 orifices. At this moment, Ai Yin also had a strange expression on her face. It was as if she wanted to laugh but was unable to do so. She said, "He didn't do anything to incur the wrath of the heavens and the people. He merely snatched the throne from his 2 elder brothers. The emperor's posthumous edict has just announced that he will inherit the throne. Therefore, he will be the future emperor of the Light Wind Empire. Of course, the prerequisite is that he survives." Bu Fang suddenly understood. The person who was originally the least favored unexpectedly inherited the throne. This naturally caused his elder brothers to fly into a rage out of humiliation. He did not have the corresponding strength, yet he was sitting on something that he should not have. This was the so-called an innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. Then why did you bring him here? This is a restaurant, not a clinic. Bu Fang looked at Ai Yin expressionlessly and asked seriously. Ai Yin's eyes narrowed into a cute crescent. She smiled and said, "With his injuries, he will definitely die if he goes to the clinic. He has been hit by the secret skill of the Mahayana Island. Even a miracle doctor would find it hard to save him. Don't count on the elixir cuisine to save him. The 2 elixir cuisines I can cook won't be able to save his injuries," Bu Fang said. Ai Yin stared at Bu Fang carefully. She stuck out her red tongue and licked her delicate lips. She smiled and said, "Medicinal cuisine won't do. Don't you have elixirs?" A grade 7 spirit herb, like the phoenix bloodgrass, is more than enough to treat this kind of injury. Just 1 section is enough," Ai Yin said. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. This woman was indeed eyeing his phoenix bloodgrass. A grade 7 spirit herb, like the phoenix bloodgrass, possessed the ability to rise from the ashes after being contaminated with the blood of the ancient phoenix. It was the best choice to save Ji Qingxue at this moment. However, Bu Fang was hesitant. He had kept the phoenix bloodgrass because he wanted to use it to brew the wine that could surpass the dragon's breath. After all, grade 7 spirit herbs were not easy to find. "Isn't your goal the phoenix bloodgrass? If I give him the phoenix bloodgrass, you won't need it anymore?" Bu Fang asked doubtfully. Ai Yin smiled and pointed at Ji Qingxue. She said, "It's not easy for me to come down the mountain. How could my goal be just for the phoenix bloodgrass? You can use it to save him. I don't feel bad. There are still many grade 7 spirit herbs in the Celestial Arcanum sect." Bu Fang was expressionless. "You don't feel bad, but I do." Bu Fang could not be bothered to say anything more to this woman. His gaze landed on Ji Qingxue, who was on the verge of death. He could not help but let out a sigh as he looked at the usually cultured, elegant, and handsome man who talked cheerfully and wittily. Now, he was on the verge of death and could not help but sigh. "I'm always too soft-hearted," Bu Fang sighed. Then, he told Ouyang Xiaoi to take care of Ji Qingxue while he walked toward the kitchen. He could not just stand by and watch Ji Qingxue die. Even if he did not care about human life, Ji Qingxue was still his old customer. He took out the phoenix bloodgrass from the cabinet. The phoenix bloodgrass was dark red in color, as if it was carved from red agate. It was exquisite and beautiful. Even after being preserved by the system's cabinet, it was still vivid and full of spirit energy. As Bu Fang walked out, the fragrance of the phoenix blood grass instantly spread out. The temperature within the store also suddenly rose by a lot. When Ai Yin saw the phoenix blood grass in Bu Fang's hand, her beautiful eyes immediately lit up. The phoenix blood grass was, after all, a 7th grade spirit herb. Even though she said it was easy Even the Celestial Arcanum sect did not have much of it in stock. The tiny phoenix bloodgrass seemed to have a fire phoenix that was about to soar into the sky. It was overflowing with colors and contained a rich vitality. Yet it was also accompanied by a terrifying, destructive force. Feeding him half a phoenix bloodgrass is enough. As for whether he lives or dies, that will depend on his own luck, Yin reminded. The phoenix bloodgrass was, after all, a 7th-grade spirit herb, and its medicinal effects were extremely astonishing. With Ji Qingshue's current condition, if he were to eat the entire stalk, forget about being reborn, he would probably directly explode from the destructive energy of the phoenix bloodgrass. Bufang expressionlessly glanced at her and nodded. Green smoke curled up from his hand, and the golden dragon bone kitchen knife immediately appeared in his hand. He did not hesitate in the slightest as he made a horizontal cut at the phoenix bloodgrass. The cut was extremely smooth, and the medicinal effects of the phoenix bloodgrass did not dissipate in the slightest. Yin's eyes immediately lit up. She stared at the golden dragon bone kitchen knife in Bufang's hand without blinking, but a storm was raging in her heart. With a wave of his hand, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife once again turned into green smoke and dissipated. Bufang walked in front of Ji Qingxue and opened his mouth. He activated the true energy in his hand, and a few drops of juice that emitted a strong smell of blood immediately dripped out of the phoenix bloodgrass. The juice continued to drip until the other half of the phoenix bloodgrass in Bufang's hand completely melted and turned into blood that dripped into Ji Qingshue's mouth. Is this better? There's still half left, but it can't be used as the main ingredient. Looks like I'll have to find some spirit herbs to make wine, Bufang muttered as he kept the remaining half of the phoenix bloodgrass into the system's storage space. He turned his head to look at Yin, only to find that the latter's gaze was filled with envy as she stared at his wrist. You actually have a semi-divine tool. Semi-divine tool? Bufang was a little puzzled. Yin retracted her gaze and smacked her lips. However, she felt a little strange in her heart. Semi-divine tools were extremely rare in the hidden dragon continent. The Celestial Arcanum sect collected information from all over the world, yet they had never obtained any information on the semi-divine tool in Bufang's hands. If the kitchen knife did not turn into green smoke and merge into the symbol on Bufang's wrist, Yin would not have been able to confirm that the kitchen knife was a semi-divine tool. However, the kitchen knife was a semi-divine tool. Yin's expression became even more strange. Just which damned master blacksmith had nothing better to do and spent so many precious materials to refine this? Just as Yin and Bufang were in a state of contemplation, Ji Qingxue, who had swallowed the other half of the phoenix bloodgrass, suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream. His eyes instantly turned red, as if there were phoenix flames burning and pulsating beneath his eyes. The rebirth from the ashes had begun. Whether Ji Qingxue could rise from the ashes and come back to life would depend on his own willpower. Bufang yawned and looked at the sky. He then turned around and chased Yin away. Ouyang Xiaoyi also waved goodbye to Bufang before closing the door and ending the business hours. Ji Qingxue continued to wail and howl in pain in the store. That kind of heart-wrenching pain, Bufang did not understand. Therefore, Bufang first went to the kitchen to practice his culinary skills, knife skills, and carving skills. After brewing a large jar of ice-hard jade-urn wine, he returned upstairs, washed up, and went to bed. Maintaining a good night's sleep was especially important. The soundproofing of the room was pretty good, so he could not hear Ji Qingshue's miserable cries. At the very least, Bufang soon fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 131. The next day, early in the morning, the sky was just beginning to brighten. The melodious sound of a bugle horn came from within the imperial palace, followed by the depressing sound of a bell with a hint of sorrow. The slumbering imperial capital seemed to have been awakened at this moment. The lights in every household were all lit up. Quite a number of citizens wrapped themselves in thick cotton coats, walked out of their houses. As they exhaled a breath of cold air, they shrunk their necks and headed in the direction of the gate of heavenly mystery. Along the way, the citizens did not make a sound as a sorrowful atmosphere lingered around them. They lamented and felt sorry for the ruthlessness of time. They felt sorry for the withering of life. The heroic ruler of a generation had also fallen with regret. This was a huge loss for the entire Light Wind Empire. The citizens' respect for Emperor Changfeng came from the bottom of their hearts because it was their fortune to have such a diligent emperor. The emperor created a prosperous era and allowed them to live in peace. They were grateful to him. Today was the day of Emperor Changfeng's burial. Therefore, the citizens of the imperial city woke up early in the morning to send Emperor Changfeng off. There were even many travel-worn people who rushed over from outside the imperial city just to see the emperor one last time. The sorrowful sound of the bell created a sorrowful atmosphere. More and more people gathered outside the gate of heavenly mystery. The guards were guarding the entrance to the gate of heavenly mystery, preventing anyone from entering. However, the citizens did not care. They only needed to wait at the entrance for the coffin containing Emperor Changfeng's body to come out. Inside the gate of heavenly mystery, a wide path had already been cleared out of the accumulated snow with the help of diligent eunuchs. This was so that the team escorting the coffin could proceed smoothly. The crown prince was dressed in mourning clothes with a sorrowful expression on his face as he gazed at the main hall. Behind him were many civil and military officials dressed in solemn attire with white gowns wrapped around them to express their sorrow for Emperor Changfeng's funeral. King Yu was dressed in mourning clothes like the crown prince with a solemn expression on his face. Behind him were the civil and military officials, as well as the experts from the sects disguised as guards. Even the experts from the sects were expressing their respect for Emperor Changfeng because he was indeed an emperor who struck fear into the hearts of the people from the sections. The two groups stood solemnly on both sides. From the main hall, a group of court musicians dressed in mourning clothes slowly walked out. They played a sorrowful piece of music, and those who heard it felt their hearts sink. Xiao Meng was dressed in a military uniform and wrapped in a white robe. He was supporting the frail Ji Ru'er, who was standing beside him. Ji Ru'er's expression was incomparably complicated, and tears could be faintly seen in her eyes. After sleeping for 3 years, when she finally woke up, it was during her imperial father's funeral. However, when Ji Ru'er looked around, trying to find Ji Qingshue's figure, she realized that Ji Qingxue was actually not around in the vast gate of Heavenly Mystery Plaza. What about becoming a snowman? Why isn't he here yet? Ji Ru'er asked Xiao Meng, who was beside her, in a weak voice. Xiao Meng's heart was also filled with doubts. Ji Qingxue should have successfully escaped from danger yesterday. How could he not appear on such an important day? As the successor to the throne in the emperor's posthumous edict, Ji Qingxue should be even more attentive. Could it be that an accident happened? Xiao Meng's eyes flickered, but a gentle smile hung on his face. He said to Ji Ru'er, "It's all right. Qingxue might have been delayed by something. He will be here soon. After all, he is the successor to the throne." Even though Ji Ru'er was still a little worried, she was infected by Xiao Meng's gentle smile. The corners of her mouth slightly curled up as she nodded her head. Xiao Yinyu and Xiao Xiaolong, who were standing behind them, felt extremely happy as they watched their parents being so affectionate. Xiao Yinyu's gaze searched everywhere, but she was unable to find that familiar figure. According to their father, the person who saved their mother was her elder brother, Xiao Yu. Furthermore, their mother had already told everything that had happened yesterday to Xiao Yinyu and Xiao Xiaolong. The resentment in their hearts toward Xiao Meng had long disappeared and was replaced by a sense of guilt. The court musicians, who were dressed in mourning clothes, walked out of the main hall. Behind them, a haggard Lian Fu, whose hair was disheveled and was dressed in white mourning clothes, slowly walked out as well. Lian Fu looked extremely exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot and droopy, and the aura around his body was fluctuating unsteadily. However, no one paid any attention to him. Perhaps he was just overwhelmed with grief. After all, Lian Fu had a good relationship with Emperor Changfeng. "Where's the third prince?" Lian Fu said with a sharp voice as he lightly flicked his horsetail whisk. However, no one responded. The crown prince and King Yu stepped forward at the same time and cupped their hands toward Lian Fu. Lian Fu gave the two of them a meaningful glance and then began to carry out some pre-burial rituals. These strict yet solemn rituals were passed down from the imperial family of the Light Wind Empire, and every prince had to abide by them. "Next, the heir to the throne, please welcome the coffin," Lian Fu said as he flicked his horsetail whisk again. However, once these words came out, it caused the civil and military officials below to whisper and discuss among themselves. The corners of Zhao Muxing's mouth curled up as he calmly stood there. King Yu and the crown prince once again stepped forward. King Yu opened his mouth and said, "I don't know why third brother hasn't appeared yet. Chief Eunuch Lian, the time cannot be delayed. Let I welcome the coffin." "Since when was it your turn to welcome the coffin?" "If I should be the one to welcome the coffin," the crown prince said as he coldly glanced at King Yu. The two of them once again confronted each other with equal harshness. Lian Fu lightly sighed. The attitudes of the two princes were too obvious. Since the third prince was not present, it seemed like he had most likely met with some mishap. Otherwise, King Yu and the crown prince would not have so confidently stepped forward to fight for the opportunity to welcome the coffin. However, under these circumstances, there had to be someone to welcome the coffin. Lian Fu was also in a difficult position. "Chief Eunuch Lian, you decide. Father trusted you the most when he was alive," King Yu said as his gaze shifted toward Lian Fu. "Princes, please conduct yourself with dignity. How can such an important matter, like welcoming the coffin, be decided carelessly? Let's wait for a while longer. If the third prince really isn't here, then the two princes will welcome the coffin together," Lian Fu said. King Yu was startled for a moment and then chuckled. Ji Qingxue definitely wouldn't be able to come. There was no point in waiting, and it would only be a waste of time. Even though that was what he thought, King Yu still had to put on a show. The crown prince was the same. The two of them looked at each other before shifting their gazes away. As time passed, the civil and military officials below were quickly becoming impatient. Whispers could be heard from time to time. Lian Fu glanced at them and then retracted his gaze. However, he was sighing in his heart. "Chief Eunuch Lian, the fact that third brother hasn't arrived is already a great disrespect to father. How can such a person inherit the throne? Leave the heavy responsibility of welcoming the coffin to me," the crown prince said once again. King Yu was not to be outdone and argued as well. However, while they were arguing, the corners of Lian Fu's mouth suddenly curled up as he looked into the distance. At the entrance of the gate of heavenly mystery, there were two figures slowly approaching. "My dear brothers, I've truly made you worry. Leave the heavy responsibility of welcoming the coffin to me. After all, I'm the heir to the throne." A cold voice rang out from afar and suddenly resounded in the ears of the crown prince and King Yu. It was like a thunderclap, causing them to feel extremely incredulous. Zhao Muxing's pupils constricted as he stared at Ji Qingxue in confusion. Beside Ji Qingxue was Xiao Yu, who had a solemn expression on his face. They were all wearing mourning clothes as they slowly walked toward the main hall. Soon after, Ji Qingxue arrived in front of Lian Fu. He gently nodded at Lian Fu before looking at the crown prince and King Yu. "I'm not dead. Big brother and second brother. Are you surprised?" Chapter 132. Bufang got out of bed, stretched his back, and went to the kitchen. Ji Qingxue had already left. Swallowing half a stalk of phoenix bloodgrass allowed him to endure the pain of rebirth. This was not bad either. The melodious sound of a bell came from outside the window, carrying a hint of sorrow and heaviness. Only then did Bufang remember that today seemed to be the day of the old emperor's funeral. After hesitating for a moment, Bufang finally decided to go to the gate of heavenly mystery to take a look. After all, he had a good impression of the old emperor. This emperor was indeed a good one, and a gluttonous one at that. After deep-frying 2 oyster pancakes for breakfast, Bufang wrapped himself in a fur coat and walked out of the store. He hung a wooden board on the door to indicate that the store was closed for business, then headed in the direction of the Gate of Heavenly Mystery. Today, heavy snowflakes were still falling from the sky. It was like a beautiful painting. Bufang took out a steaming hot oyster pancake. After blowing on it, he directly bit into it. After the crispy skin was bitten into pieces, a rich fragrance spread out from within. Smelling this fragrance, Bufang's stomach could not help but feel even hungrier. While eating the oyster pancake, Bufang walked and soon arrived at the vermilion walls of the Gate of Heavenly Mystery. A long queue had already formed, and many of the citizens were craning their necks to look into the Gate of Heavenly Mystery, wanting to see the scene inside. Bufang, on the other hand, was not in a hurry at all. He was happily eating the oyster pancake at the back of the queue. The fragrance spread to the surroundings and attracted the gazes of the citizens to land on his body. What kind of fragrance was this? It was simply too fragrant. The eyes of the citizens were filled with desire as they looked at the oyster pancake in Bufang's hand. Many of them even licked their lips, subconsciously wanting to lick the fragrance. However, they were only rewarded with the coldness of winter. Crunch, crunch. Bufang once again took a bite of the oyster pancake and expressionlessly chewed to the side. The people around him were furious. This was simply an animal. Eating such a fragrant thing so early in the morning, was he trying to attract hatred? Therefore, a large circle quickly appeared around Bufang. The people around him all moved away, not wanting to get close to Bufang, lest they suffer the torture of the fragrance. Bufang glanced at the people around him expressionlessly. He was a little confused. What were these people doing? Since there was an empty spot, Bufang naturally walked forward. The moment he walked, the surrounding crowd dispersed. This allowed Bufang to easily stand at the entrance of the Gate of Heavenly Mystery, an excellent position to observe the situation. That guy ran so fast. So this is where he came from. Bufang took a bite of the oyster pancake as he looked at the confrontation between King Yu and the crown prince in front of the main hall. Ji Qingshue's entire temperament had changed. After all, after experiencing a life and death situation, his mental state had undergone a huge transformation. In the past, he was somewhat fearful when facing the crown prince and King Yu. However, he was now able to remain calm and composed. He even used his gaze to directly threaten King Yu and the crown prince, causing the two of them to slightly back off. "I'm the successor. I'm here to receive the coffin," Ji Qingshu mocked as he glanced at the two of them. King Yu and the crown prince were immediately stunned as they angrily glared at Ji Qingshu. This brat actually became so arrogant. Lian Fu nodded and guided Ji Qingshu to stand in the main hall. Then, the coffin receiving ceremony began. The ceremony was actually not very complicated and ended in a short while. At this point, the coffin receiving ceremony truly began. The so-called coffin receiving ceremony was a tradition of the Light Wind imperial family that had been passed down for generations. The successor would receive the coffin, and once the coffin receiving party walked out of the Gate of Heavenly Mystery, it meant that the person receiving the coffin had obtained the approval of the deceased and officially handed over the throne. This was also the reason why the crown prince and King Yu were so interested in the identity of the person receiving the coffin. The court musicians began to play once again. In the depths of the main hall, 8 tall and sturdy battle kings with bare upper bodies slowly walked out while carrying a huge bronze coffin. Their footsteps were extremely firm. Every step they took caused the accumulated snow on the ground to tremble. The coffin was made of bronze, and there were many mysterious patterns engraved on it. There were ancient divine beasts, flowers that were difficult to name, and there were also all kinds of characters and diagrams. Ji Qingshu solemnly walked in front of the 8 battle kings that were carrying the coffin. His expression was solemn, and he was meticulous. With every step the 8 battle kings took, white smoke would be emitted from their nostrils. Each step was firm and slow, yet it was as if they were stepping on the hearts of everyone present. On the main road of the gate of heavenly mystery, the 8 battle kings were carrying the coffin forward. This scene caused everyone to hold their breaths. Even the snowflakes falling from the sky seemed to have stopped, and the atmosphere became extremely heavy. Zhao Mushing narrowed his eyes as he looked at the bronze coffin. An obscure brilliance was circulating within his eyes. For an emperor of a generation to end up in a deep slumber within a small space, how sorrowful was that for an emperor of a generation? Ring, ring, ring. Just as the group carrying the coffin arrived at the center of the gate of heavenly mystery, the sound of true energy gushing could be heard. King Yu's expression was cold as he coldly stared at Ji Qingxue, who was standing at the front of the group, and indifferently said, "If your third eldest brother sits on the throne, I, King Yu, will be the first one to object." Boom, boom, boom. King Yu's voice was not loud, but reverberated throughout the entire gate of heavenly mystery. Behind him, streams of terrifying aura gushed out as several figures sped toward Ji Qingxue. "How dare you?" Lian Fu angrily shouted from the high platform in the main hall. His voice was like a thunderclap as he took a step forward and swung his horsetail whisk. As a brilliance circulated and a pitch-black stream of light flickered, the silhouette of a Hades suddenly appeared. It was incomparably huge and proudly stood at the center of the gate of heavenly mystery. The spirit fire within Han Qinyun's eye sockets pulsated as he drew upon the power of the silhouette of a Hades to strengthen himself. In an instant, his aura skyrocketed as he threw a punch toward Lian Fu, who was flying toward him. When the two collided, it instantly caused a monstrous energy fluctuation. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Lian Fu's figure actually trembled as he was sent flying backward while spitting out blood. His aura had completely dissipated. Xiao Ming furrowed his eyebrows. This was not Lian Fu's strength at all. When he saw that Han Qinyun was about to kill Lian Fu, he could no longer sit idly by. His pressure spread out as he stepped forward and stopped Han Qinyun. Coquettish laughter rang out as the 5 females from the Joyous Union sect attacked together. Their target was Ji Qingxue. Meanwhile, the experts from the White Bone Palace targeted the 8 battle kings that were carrying the coffin. King Yu's expression changed as he coldly shouted, "You're not allowed to destroy the coffin." King Yu's goal was to fight for the throne. After all, Emperor Changfeng was still his father. Destroying the coffin where his father was resting in peace was something he could not do. However, his shout did not cause the people from the White Bone Palace to stop. This time, his expression completely changed. TSK, TSK, TSK. Emperor Changfeng destroyed countless sects and obtained countless spoils of war. Even from afar, I can sense the aura of the Death Soul Hall's semi-divine weapon in this coffin. A semi-divine weapon was buried with him. He is indeed worthy of being an emperor throughout the ages. The Bone King from the White Bone Palace sneered as his gaze suddenly turned fierce. The subordinates beside him exploded one after another and turned into ghastly white bones that pieced together with his body, forming a gigantic white skeleton. Its aura was powerful, and it had actually reached the 7th grade. Chapter 133. Stop! King Yu was enraged. These people from the sects actually dared to disobey his orders. However, the 7th grade skeleton formed by the experts of the White Bone Palace did not pay any attention to King Yu's rebuke. Its skeletal palms slapped toward the coffin as its sunken eyes were filled with greed and longing. The pressure of a 7th grade battle saint was too much for the 8 battle kings who were carrying the coffin. They knelt on one knee, and their complexions suddenly flushed red. The bronze coffin that they were carrying also fell to the ground with a loud bang. Boom! A heavy sound resounded throughout the entire gate of heavenly mystery. Everyone's movements became sluggish as they involuntarily looked toward the heavy coffin that had fallen to the ground. The coffin touched the ground. The funeral was ruined. Such a thought flashed through everyone's mind, and they could not help but feel complicated. Was it lamentable or lamentable that a dignified emperor's funeral was ruined in the end? King Yu's pupils constricted as flames of fury immediately surged within his heart. True energy surged as he glared at the skeleton. The aura on Ji Chengshua's body became even more powerful. With the help of the Phoenix Blood Herb, he had already stepped into the realm of 6th grade Battle Emperor. This was definitely an unexpected surprise. Ji Chengshua's expression was as cold as ice as he pushed away the 5 women from the Joyous Union sect who were attacking him with a palm strike. You sect rebels are simply impudent. The skeleton was also startled for a moment before it became overjoyed. With a wave of its hand, a powerful aura burst forth and swept the 8 Battle Kings to the side. It took a step forward and arrived before the bronze coffin. As it gazed at the coffin with a fervent gaze, even its skeletal arms were slightly trembling. An aura that it desired was faintly emitting from within the coffin. That was the semi-divine tool of the Death Soul Palace, the departed soul orb. Even though the White Bone Palace was on the same level as the Death Soul Palace, their sect did not have a semi-divine tool. This had always been a sore point for them. After the Death Soul Palace was overthrown by Xiao Meng, the semi-divine tool, the departed soul orb, was also brought back to the Imperial City. The departed soul orb had the ability to pacify souls and even preserve the flesh from rotting. It was the best funerary object. Since Emperor Changfeng had obtained the departed soul orb, there was no way he wouldn't bury it with him. In the distance, Xiao Meng's expression was gloomy. The Hades phantom before him that Hun Qinyan had activated was extremely powerful. Even he would need to spend some time to deal with it. As he looked at the white skeleton that was about to touch the coffin, the chill in Xiao Meng's eyes became even more intense. A clanging sound was heard. A sword light that seemed to pour down from the 9 heavens arrived in an instant and slashed at the skeleton. Ji Qingxue let out a long howl as the phantom image of a fire phoenix appeared on his body. His entire body dashed forward and punched the white skeleton. Xiao Yu and Ji Qingxue attacked at the same time, using their strongest techniques to force the white skeleton away. Humph! You're courting death. The white skeleton stopped its movements, then turned around. Its entire body suddenly trembled, and countless white bone spears shot out from its body, piercing toward Ji Qingxue and Xiao Yu. The sky-splitting sword was blocked. Xiao Yu is only a 6th grade Battle Emperor after all, so he helplessly fell to the ground. Ji Qingxue shattered a bone spear with a punch, then fell to the ground and retreated as well. With the gap between their cultivation levels, they had no chance of approaching the white skeleton. Bang! The white skeleton let out a sinister laugh, then fiercely slapped its palm on the coffin. A huge force surged forth, attempting to directly lift the coffin lid. However, it soon realized that something was wrong. Even though it exerted a tremendous force, it was unable to pry open the coffin lid in the slightest. This coffin is strange. The willow, the wisp, and the white skeleton's eye sockets flickered. In the distance, Zhao Mushing also frowned as he carefully stared at the coffin. Then, his pupils abruptly constricted. The coffin moved. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the lid of the coffin slowly opened on its own. The friction between the lid and the coffin wall gave off an ancient sound, causing everyone's hair to stand on end and goosebumps to appear on their skin. The movements of everyone battling above the gate of heavenly mystery froze as they dumbfoundedly stared at the coffin. The disheveled Lien Fu let out a piercing laugh. He pinched his thumb and middle finger together as his gaze swept across the battlefield. With blood dripping from his mouth, he said, one word at a time, "All of you sect rebels must die." Just as he finished speaking, a figure sat up from within the coffin. A terrifying aura surged out from the figure's body. What? The white skeleton was the closest to the coffin and immediately felt a surging aura surge toward it. It was a majestic and domineering aura that was supreme and inviolable. The white skeleton was immediately sent flying by this aura. Its figure immediately collapsed in midair and turned into bones that littered the ground. The combination was actually forcefully broken apart. Zhao Mushing sucked in a breath of cold air as he stared at the figure within the coffin. Ji Changfeng was not dead. No, this figure does not have the slightest sign of life. It should be dead, but what's with this surging energy? Furthermore, this energy is flowing in all directions. Zhao Mushing muttered. Then he seemed to have thought of something, and his face instantly turned pale. Ji Changfeng, what a scheming move. The entire gate of heavenly mystery suddenly trembled as the white snow melted and evaporated. The stone pillar that was covered by the snow actually emitted rays of light as mysterious patterns appeared on its surface. Everyone was a little confused. Just what was going on? Double Calamity Dragon Head Array. Ji Changfeng actually awakened this magic array. That old man actually made the right calculations. And Ayan was wrapped in a loose robe as she proudly stood in the air outside the gate of heavenly mystery. She could not help but exclaim in admiration as she gazed at the seemingly alive gate of heavenly mystery. The main reason she left the mountain was actually for this double calamity dragonhead array, the Light Wind Empire's protective magic array. During the founding of the empire, the first emperor of the Light Wind Empire once relied on this magic array to obliterate dozens of 7th-grade battle saints from his sect. It was a terrifying magic array that caused countless sects to tremble in fear. Its power was even comparable to that of an 8th-grade war god. In the records of the Celestial Arcanum sect, this double calamity dragonhead array could be ranked among the top 5 magic arrays. And Ayan's purpose for this trip was also entrusted by the Celestial Arcanum sect master to record this double calamity dragonhead array. With a flick of her sleeves, several jade talismans were immediately tossed into the air. She channeled her true energy into the jade talismans, causing them to tremble. The jade talismans blossomed with light and formed a giant eyeball above Ayan's head. The eyeball observed everything within the gate of heavenly mystery and silently recorded everything. Suddenly, Ayan's gaze froze as she suspiciously looked toward the gate of heavenly mystery. There, a thin figure suddenly squeezed through the gate of heavenly mystery and slowly walked toward the battlefield. Honorbu, is he crazy? Nowadays, there are endless battles within the gate of heavenly mystery. What is a chef doing in there? Oh, rays of light soared into the sky from beneath the bricks of the gate of heavenly mystery. The rays of light converged in the air and spread out in all directions, forming a giant energy barrier that enveloped everyone within it. The 2 stone pillars seemed to have awakened as they each shot out a pitch-black, unadorned chain toward the bronze coffin. The chains wrapped around the coffin and lifted it into the air. Then, an endless amount of energy shot down with the coffin as the center, forming a vast magic array that shone with resplendent splendor. Amidst the roar of a dragon, an enormous phantom of a divine dragon drilled out from the magic array and stood proudly above the gate of heavenly mystery. The dragon's mouth was slightly opened as energy continuously dispersed from it. I've been conquering sects for so many years, and countless experts from the sect have died in my hands. How dare you insult me during my burial? Even if I have fallen, I am not someone you can humiliate. Therefore, all of the rebels within the gate of heavenly mystery must die. Chapter 134. Temporary Mission Hint. Obtain the 3 stripes path understanding fruit from the burial goods of the emperor. This fruit is a 7th-grade spirit fruit with 3 stripes. It constantly releases 3 different fragrances and is an excellent ingredient for brewing wine. The system recommends it as the host's alternative main ingredient for brewing fine wine. Bufong stood at the entrance of the gate of heavenly mystery and took a bite of the crispy oyster pancake. The large and plump oyster was so delicious that he almost swallowed his tongue. When he stuffed the last bite of the oyster pancake into his mouth, the solemn voice of the system resounded in his mind. Bufong was startled. Obtain the 3 stripes path understanding fruit, the burial goods of the old emperor. Moreover, it was recommended as an ingredient for brewing wine. The sudden voice of the system was completely out of Bufong's expectations. According to the content, the system was practically giving him a prompt for the temporary mission. According to Nin, the dragon's breath was brewed using over 100 types of spirit herbs after going through a special process. The steps were complicated and the ingredients were extremely luxurious. Ordinary wines could not compare to it. If Bufong wanted to brew a wine that was better than the dragon's breath, he would have to improve the ingredients and brewing techniques to a higher level. If Bufong were to find the ingredients himself, he would really have no confidence. The system's sudden reminder made Bufong reveal a trace of joy in his heart. As expected of the system that assisted him to stand at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world to become the god of cooking. It was so considerate and so perfect. Oh, whoa. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched. Suddenly, a loud and clear dragon's roar came from the gate of heavenly mystery. A gigantic phantom of a divine dragon that almost covered the sky almost filled Bufong's eyes. System, do I really want to go? I keep feeling that it's very dangerous inside. Bufong expressionlessly asked the system. Young man, in order to become the god of cooking, how can you be afraid on the path of obtaining ingredients? For the sake of ingredients, move forward. The system earnestly gave him a bowl of chicken soup. Bufong. All sect rebels must die. The emperor's majestic words lingered in the entire Tianxian Gate Square, deafening everyone's ears. It was as if thunder had fallen from the heavens and suddenly exploded. The divine dragon phantom opened its mouth and spoke the emperor's words. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, their faces filled with disbelief. The emperor had fallen, this was a fact, but the emperor had used a different method to come back to life. He had actually borrowed the ancient array of the gate of heavenly mystery to transform his own soul into the erased spirit. As the formation spirit, the emperor had absolute control over the double calamity dragon head formation. To put it simply, the current emperor had the terrifying power of the double calamity dragon head formation. The shock on Zhao Muxing's face slowly receded and was replaced by a smile. As expected of Emperor Changfeng, I have indeed underestimated him. But did he really think that he could kill all the sex experts with this double calamity dragon head array? The current double calamity dragon head formation was no longer the formation used when the Light Wind Empire was founded. Father, is it really you? Ji Qingxue raised his head and blankly stared at Ji Changfeng, who had transformed into a divine dragon phantom. That familiar voice coming from the mouth of the divine dragon phantom gave him a strange feeling. Today, I announce that the throne is being passed to you. I hope you won't disappoint me. The divine dragon phantom was high up in the sky, indifferently looking down on the common people. Ji Qingxue took a deep breath and solemnly nodded his head. Why? Father, why is it him? An unwilling roar came from afar. King Yu had a ferocious expression on his face as he stared at the divine dragon phantom and questioned. He did not understand, he was doubtful, and he refused to accept this. Why did his father have to pass the throne to Ji Qingxue, who had the least presence? The crown prince also had an unwilling expression on his face. However, he did not ask, or rather, he did not dare to ask. At this moment, Ji Changfeng was not the sickly Ji Changfeng, but Emperor Changfeng, who had transformed into a divine dragon phantom. Within this magic array, Emperor Changfeng could take their lives with a single thought. The divine dragon finally moved. Its gigantic body swayed for a while, as if the sound of thunder was exploding. The gigantic dragon turned its head around and indifferently glanced at King Yu with its dragon eyes. Then it opened its mouth and said, "Are you allowed to question my decision?" This extremely domineering sentence immediately made King Yu feel as if his entire body was drenched in cold water. A vast pressure that felt as if it was descending from the heavens suddenly landed on King Yu's body. King Yu's pupils constricted, and he immediately knelt on the ground. Colluding with the rebels of the sex, this is the first crime. Disrespecting me, this is the second crime. Trying to kill your own brother, this is the third crime. All three crimes will be punished together. Your cultivation will be sealed, your royal status will be revoked, and you will guard the imperial mausoleum for 3 years. Within these 3 years, you are not allowed to take even half a step out of the imperial mausoleum. In the sky, the divine dragon phantom indifferently opened its mouth. King Yu, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly trembled. He abruptly raised his head with a face full of unwillingness and angrily roared, "Why, King Yu?" The women of the Joyous Union sect also cried out in alarm. In the distance, Han Xinyun's aura abruptly shook with disbelief, sealing his cultivation, revoking his royal status, and sentencing him to guard the imperial mausoleum for 3 years. Wasn't that equivalent to imprisonment? If that was really the case, then King Yu would be completely crippled. King Yu's angry roar and unwillingness reverberated throughout the entire gate of heavenly mystery. His voice was almost hoarse from shouting, and his eyes were bloodshot. With his personality, he would never accept such an outcome. Do it! Do it! Slay this dragon for me. I, Ji Qingyu, can't just accept my fate like this. Ji Qingyu roared. The members of the sects in the distance were all somewhat hesitant. Han Qinyun, have you forgotten what I promised you? If I can't become the emperor, everything I promised you will be for naught. Ji Qingyu roared. The eyes of Wei Xiangxi, Han Qinyun, and the Bone King, who had just gotten up from the ground, flickered with uncertainty. In the end, they clenched their teeth as if they had made an important decision. Boom, boom, boom. Hades's phantom appeared, and Han Qinyun's aura surged. The Joyous Union bell swayed as the 5 women stood in a strange magic array, emitting a powerful aura. The Bone King sneered and once again transformed into a ferocious white skeleton. 3 auras, which were not weaker than a 7th-grade battle saint, surged up and enveloped the entire area as they charged toward the divine dragon phantom. Even Xiao Meng felt that he would definitely be severely injured when facing the combined attack of these 3. He could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. After all, this was equivalent to 3 7th-grade battle saints attacking at full power at the same time. The power unleashed was simply too terrifying. However, a dragon's roar caused everyone to subconsciously cover their ears. A violent gust of wind blew as a golden dragon claw covered the sky and abruptly slammed down from above. The dragon claw emitted a terrifying pressure as it directly smashed toward the 3 groups. Sect rebels, I have yet to settle the score with you. If you still dare to make a move, then go to hell. As the dragon's roar resounded, the 3 groups were directly smashed into the ground by the dragon claw. The entire gate of heavenly mystery violently trembled as if an earthquake had occurred. After a long while, the smoke and dust dispersed and the scene within the arena was revealed. Everyone, including Zhao Musheng, felt a chill run down their spine. They looked at the divine dragon phantom in disbelief and were extremely fearful. King Yu felt as if he had been struck by lightning as a hint of fear gradually appeared in his eyes. In front of him, the experts of the 3 great demonic sects were smashed into minced meat by the divine dragon phantom. They were completely smashed into pieces. The 5 enchanting beauties of the Joyous Union sect, Han Xinyun, the elder of the Soul sect, and the Bone King, the white skeleton, were all smashed into minced meat by this one palm. The eyes of the divine dragon phantom turned and once again landed on Ji Qingyu as its indifferent voice rang out. Are you still not convinced? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.